Good evening, everyone. Just before we get formally underway, we're going to hand, as we've done before, to our Chief Information Officer, Bernardo Mariano, for some words of technical guidance. Bernardo, over to you, please.
Thank you, Jane. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Just want to update a little bit on the platform. So for this session, EB 147, we're using a Zoom webinar with a 5,000 participant capacity, and within that capacity we have 1,000 Zoom panelists and 4,000 Zoom attendees. So that will allow us to those two Zoom panelists, Zoom attendees, consider them as rooms. But for this session, we provide the links to all delegates as Zoom panelists, which allows full interactions of all enabled features in the platform. We recommend that delegates, member states connect using the latest Zoom software. The latest one is version 5.4.2, which fixed some of the problems of interpretation, especially original sound from the floor interacting with the interpreted channel. We also recommend internet bandwidth of at least 2 megabits per second, preferable wired connectivity rather than Wi-Fi to make sure that you have a better video and sound quality. And echo cancelling microphones, it's important to ensure that the voice quality that comes to the platform is as best as possible. Using soundproof or echo-free rooms will help also with the quality of sound. To prevent or to have a better quality in terms of interpreted languages, please, when taking the floor, make sure that the language you speak and the language you are listening to interpretation is the same, to ensure that there's no interference in other channels of other languages. If you're connecting from a conference room, please make sure that the audio equipment, especially the volume of that conference room, is low enough to avoid a feedback loop, which would then create or deteriorate the sound quality. Adjust your speech to remote distance by speaking clearly and avoid excessive use of acronyms, and speak to the microphone. Please speak natural and moderate pace to ensure that the interpreters are able to interpret clearly. If any member state or any delegate faces challenges, we have a team to support with a Zoom link that you can access to test, and then ensure that your quality is the quality of sound and voice or video is tested, and we support you. In the background, for any delegate having challenges, we will try to contact you to ensure that next time you intervene, your quality of sound is as best as possible. And please download the app, the event app, as needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Bernardo, and now we pass to our esteemed Chair of the Executive Board to get this resumed session of the 147th meeting of the Executive Board underway. Over to you, Dr. Harsh Vardhan.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening Your Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is with pleasure that I declare the resumed session of 147th Executive Board open. Due to the epidemiological situation in Geneva and in many parts of the world, this meeting will be held virtually. I have particular pleasure in welcoming all the Executive Board members and their alternates and advisors who are joining the meeting through the virtual platform. I would also like to cordially greet representatives of member states, observers, the United Nations, various United Nations bodies and specialized agencies, other intergovernmental organizations, and non-state actors in official relations with WHO, whose participation is further evidence of the close relations between WHO and these organizations. I would also like to welcome our colleagues who are following the deliberations of this meeting. Distinguished members of the WHO Executive Board, honorable ministers, excellencies, and other member state representatives, DG WHO, Regional Director of WHO Southeast Asia, Regional Directors of other regions, heads and representatives of UN agencies, partner organizations, brothers, sisters, and healthcare workers around the world. Today we have once again joined virtually for the resumed 147th session of the WHO Executive Board. I welcome you all today amidst what we all know are unprecedented times. And yet, I would say that 2020 has been the year of collaborative action. Mankind was already fighting overwhelming challenges: poverty, hunger, inequality, climate change, pollution, violence, war, disease, and now the pandemic, which has shaken us to the core. But we came together as the nations of the world because we chose not to be overwhelmed. We choose optimism and struggle to achieve. We choose a better future. There is no better future without health for all. A lesson we knew and a lesson that we have now relearned. In India, we bless each other as Ayushman Bhava, which means may you have a long and healthy life. That itself is the essence of life and existence. That itself is the essence of our organization, the World Health Organization, which binds us all together, and which is why we are all here today together. All the member states of WHO share the same philosophy: health above all. Each member nation here will agree with me that in the gravest of situations, humankind has conquered its adversaries with collaborations and supplementing efforts of each other by pooling resources. We at WHO believe in the principle that the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being, without distinction of race, religion, political belief, economic or social condition. We therefore commit to work with the member states, the organization, and the global community of partners for the efficient, effective, and responsive discharge of public health obligations. The pandemic has made humanity acutely aware of the consequences of ignoring health systems strengthening and preparedness. In such times of global crisis, risk management and mitigation both would require further strengthening of global partnerships to reinvigorate interest and investment in global public health. I am sure that our constant engagement with each member state, their interface with each other, as well as all stakeholders will reinforce reforms, and help accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals and universal health coverage with the most productive, efficient, and targeted utilization of resources. As I happen to be the Health Minister of India, I would like to mention here that the Southeast Asia region and India are continuously striving to improve health services, their reach, delivery, and quality. We have seen successes in all the regional flagship priority areas through collaborative action. We will continue to contribute to regional and global public health issues through advocacy, technical collaboration, research, innovations, digital health, and partnerships aimed at improving the accessibility and affordability of health services and high quality essential medicines and products. Excellencies, this pandemic has claimed more than 1,300,000 precious lives, infected millions, and snatched away the livelihoods of billions. My heartfelt condolences to those families across the world who have lost their near and dear ones to this deadly disease. I also take this opportunity to salute our doctors and health workers who had been working relentlessly in rendering selfless service to fight this deadly disease. And I urge all of you to please join me in giving them a big hand. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, in the last over 10 months of this pandemic, I have observed that the World Health Organization, with a mandate to be the lead agency for health, has done a commendable job of working along with member states from the very beginning to provide required technical assistance to support the continuation of essential healthcare service delivery. WHO and its member states across the globe are committed to harnessing this opportunity to build back health systems that are more resilient and which can meet everyone's health needs. We are already identifying and acting on the lessons learned from the current crisis so that together we can achieve more robust and resilient health systems that can promote a sustained economic recovery and a healthier future for people across the world. Let me mention that from the beginning of the outbreak, all member states have acted with speed, scale, and solidarity to control and suppress the spread of COVID-19 and empower individuals and communities to stay safe, healthy, and well. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, this is the time that we must enhance our cooperation and collaboration. We must work in unison with each other as member states, with all UN organizations, as well as the global community of partners, for efficient, effective, and responsive discharge of public health obligations. Excellencies, today for the current session, we have an elaborate agenda to cover, which includes outcome of the recently concluded resumed session of the 73rd World Health Assembly and the report of the Program, Budget and Administration Committee of the Executive Board, along with few managerial, administrative, financial, and staffing matters of the organization. I am looking forward to your active engagement and fruitful deliberations on these agenda items. Finally, I take this opportunity to once again thank all of you for reposing your faith and trust in me, and look forward to our association and continued cooperation. Acknowledging the contributions of our member states, our organization, all partners, and all stakeholders in overcoming serious health challenges and advancing health causes in the past 7 decades, I would like to state that the global family shall once again prevail. Thank you. Colleagues, before we proceed further, I would like to say a few words about the virtual platform and making procedural motions. Member states wishing to raise a point of order or exercise a right of reply should do so by sending a message to the following telephone number by SMS, text, or by WhatsApp. The number is +4179 467 2870. I repeat once again, the number is +4179 467 2870. This number is the same member states used during the Health Assembly, and it is staffed during meetings and may be used for points of order, requests for rights of reply, or other procedural motions only. It may not be used for any other matter. The right of reply will be accorded at the end of the day. Delegates are kindly required to keep their interventions as brief as possible, and in the interest of time, it would be appreciated if interventions could be limited to up to 3 minutes. To regulate the conduct of this virtual session, we shall now take up the draft decision contained in document EB 147/13 on the special procedures to regulate the conduct of the resumed virtual session of the 147th Executive Board. May I take it that the Executive Board is ready to adopt the special procedures contained in document EB 147/13 and to apply them to this meeting? I see no objection. It is so decided. Thank you. The special procedures to regulate the conduct of this meeting, unlike the special procedure for the Health Assembly, did not envisage the possibility for the member states who are not members of the board to submit pre-recorded video statements. However, I understand that member states often submit pre-recorded video statements and the Secretariat has the capacity to play them if the board so agrees. As chair, I would propose to have a flexible approach to this matter and therefore to allow for pre-recorded videos sent by member states to be played at this meeting in lieu of oral interventions. Is the proposal acceptable to the board? I see no objection. It is so decided. Thank you for your flexibility. As you recall, the Executive Board adopted the agenda of its 147th session at the virtual de minimis meeting in May 2020, as contained in document EB 147/1 Rev 1. During our meeting in May, we addressed item 1, election of the chair, vice chairs, and rapporteur, as well as item 5.5, committees of the Executive Board, filling of vacancies. We also addressed item 8, future sessions of the Executive Board and the Health Assembly, and took 3 decisions on the date and place of future meetings, including a decision that the future meetings would be held at Geneva headquarters, and I would like to propose that we return to this item during this resumed session to discuss whether we should hold physical or virtual meetings in January 2020. May I take it that the board agrees to this proposal? I see no objection. It is so decided. Thank you. It is important that we hold the meetings in a constructive manner. I would like to inform you that individual statements by members of the board will be limited to 3 minutes. Individual statement by all member states not represented on the board and associate members will be limited to 2 minutes. Statements by observers, invited representatives of United Nations and other participating intergovernmental organizations and non-state actors in official relations with WHO will be limited to 1 minute. Regional and group statements will be limited to 4 minutes. I will invoke Rule 31 on a time limit for speakers during our discussions. I will also invoke Rule 14 and will call to order any speaker whose remarks are irrelevant to the subject under discussion. I would also like to remind you that delegates should deliver their speech at a moderate speed that allows for its interpretation and ensures their message is conveyed clearly and accurately. As a guide, please take into account that a 3-minute speech is about 330 words. Please send a copy of your oral statements in advance to the email address interpret@who.int. I would like to inform you that in the context of the WHO reform and in line with decision EB 134-3, this session of the Executive Board is accessible to participants via live broadcasting. The link can be found on the WHO web page. Does the board agree to these proposals for the organization of work on the understanding that adjustments may need to be made in line with the progress of our deliberations during the day? I see no comments. It is so decided. Let us now decide on the timing of the meeting. I should like to propose that the board meet from 10 to 13 hours CET and from 14 to 17 hours CET, Central European Time. I take it that there are no objections to the proposed meeting schedule. As I see no objection, it is so decided. Now I would like to request the DGWHO and would like to give the floor to him to provide his opening remarks. Dr. Tedros, please.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, Dr. Vardhan, Minister of Health and Family Welfare of India and Chair of the Executive Board, Namaste. Distinguished members of the Executive Board, first of all, I would like to wish the Chair a very happy Diwali and thank you for taking time away from your family and friends at this important time of year to chair today's meeting. I would also like to thank all members of the Executive Board for your work in preparing for and executing a very successful World Health Assembly last week. Although we had hoped to hold the resumed WHA in person, this was not possible. Thank you for your flexibility in enabling a fully virtual WHA. Together we have shown, with the aid of modern technologies, the work of the organization can continue even in the most extreme circumstances. The Assembly adopted important resolutions on emergency preparedness, meningitis, neglected tropical diseases, epilepsy, and other neurological disorders, immunization, cervical cancer, tuberculosis, healthy aging, innovation, and intellectual property, eye care and food safety, and declared 2021 the International Year of the Health Worker. As you know, I also announced 3 new initiatives to further strengthen both national capacities and WHO's efforts to support them. First, the Universal Health and Preparedness Review. Second, the Council on the Economics of Health for All. And third, the idea of a new biobank for sharing pathogens and clinical samples. We are now developing each of these concepts, and we will shortly be sharing more information about how member states can engage with them. Although the pandemic has been a setback to our collective efforts to attain the 3 billion targets and the health-related sustainable development goals, we in the Secretariat remain completely committed to supporting member states to get back on track. The new results framework, which was noted by the Assembly, and the 3 billion dashboard will be important tools for keeping ourselves accountable. The member states represented in the Executive Committee represent the full range of experiences with COVID-19. Some of your nations have not yet recorded a single case or a single death. Some have had clusters of cases but have avoided widespread transmission. Some have had large outbreaks and have managed to bring them under control. And some are still facing large outbreaks with sustained community transmission. WHO remains committed to supporting countries in every scenario. Last week, we had encouraging news about vaccines on 2 fronts, as you know. And second, commitments to the Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator have now reached more than $5 billion, thanks to new contributions from France, Spain, the Republic of Korea, the European Commission, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, announced at the Paris Peace Forum. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we knew that a vaccine would be essential for bringing the pandemic under control, which is why WHO proposed the ACT Accelerator. But it's important to emphasize that a vaccine will complement the other tools we have, not replace them. A vaccine on its own will not end the pandemic. Initially, supply will be limited to health workers. So health workers, older people, and other at-risk populations will be prioritized. That will hopefully reduce the number of deaths and enable health systems to cope. But that will still leave the virus with a lot of room to move. Surveillance will need to continue. People will still need to be tested, isolated, and cared for. Contacts will still need to be traced and quarantined. Communities will still need to be engaged, and individuals will still need to be careful. We still have a long road to travel, and you, as our executive board, have a vital role to play. We look to you for guidance and advice on how we in the Secretariat can better support all member states to break the chains of transmission and save lives. Thank you once again for your service, for your guidance. We look forward to today's discussion and to working with you in the weeks and months ahead. I thank you.
Thank you, DG, Dr. Tedros, for your words of wisdom and blessings to the board. We shall now move to agenda item 3, and this is about outcome of the 73rd World Health Assembly. The floor is now open for discussion. I would like to request that the Secretariat moderate the discussion on the virtual platform. Over to Secretariat.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Chair. We would kindly ask those wishing to make a statement to please raise their hand in the Zoom platform. I should now like to give the floor to the distinguished delegate of Germany. Thank you. You have the floor.
you hear me well? Wonderful. Perfect. So, first of all, thanks a lot, Chair. I'd like to greet everyone. We can absolutely echo the words of our DG. The assembly was a very, very successful virtual assembly. It ran very smoothly and we achieved many great successes. From our point of view, it was a perfect virtual meeting, as good as a virtual meeting just can be. Obviously, there are limits to interaction in between delegations, and I guess we all look forward to times where we can meet again and provide real governance and oversight through formats that allow negotiations and interaction at some stage in the near future, hopefully. However, one point of concern that we would want to raise is, and it was also a cause of frustration, is the preparation to the assembly. And that it was a cause of frustration for many delegations, and I guess also for the Secretariat. We, all of us invested lots of energy and time, but only 1.5 working days ahead of the assembly, the agenda management plan was clear, so we knew when and how many statements we would be able to hear. And from our point of view, that's certainly not perfect, it's not good and not effective. We wasted quite a lot of time and energy that we all need to spend somewhere else. So we believe the Assembly obviously is the key decision-making body for 194 member states, and we need to know well in advance how the agenda will be managed for each agenda, be it a physical one, but also a virtual one. And we would believe that 4 weeks ahead of an assembly, we need to have a robust agenda management plan that is set in stone. Obviously, if things happen in between, then we need to show flexibility. I'd like to add another point of concern, and that is regarding processes for adaptation of resolutions and strategies. At least to our delegation, some of these processes have been extremely unclear and confusing, and therefore were to some extent also a little bit unsatisfactory for us. We believe that in the future we want to encourage the Secretariat to publish all consultations on the first page of the WHO website, so they are very clear to everybody that there is a consultation ongoing. This would contribute to a transparent and inclusive process. We believe there needs to be a time frame for consultation. We want to know exactly when non-state members are consulted. We believe final documents should be shared with an explicit mentioning that those documents are final. And if there's a launching event on strategies, etc., we would want to know transparently when these launching events are. Finally, what's the way forward? We believe for the next World Health Assembly, we expect, as I mentioned, a robust plan for agenda management to be finalized at least 4 weeks ahead of the Assembly. We believe that we have to come back to usual practice with regards to the consultations, and I think we believe there is room for improvement when it comes to inclusiveness and transparency here. And finally, with regards to the board that comes up in January, we need to understand the lessons learned from the Assembly, namely that we have to have a robust plan how to manage the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Germany. We should now like to give the floor to the distinguished delegate of Botswana, to be followed by the United Kingdom and the United States of America. Thank you, and Botswana, you have the floor.
Chairperson, Botswana has the honor to deliver the statement on behalf of the 47 member states of the WHO Africa region. At the outset, we wish to congratulate the WHO Secretariat for their well-coordinated and successful World Health Assembly. This has demonstrated strong leadership and sent a signal to the world that despite the unpredictable situation that has been brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, continuity of WHO's program of work remains paramount. We also extend our gratitude to the President of the World Health Assembly, Her Excellency Kiba Bain, and the chairpersons of all the committees for the smooth conduct of the meeting. We worked efficiently and the agenda has been completed within time as was agreed in the special procedures. Moreover, we believe that the start and finish time of the meetings and the management of the Assembly via the virtual platform enabled a fair and balanced geographical participation at the different committees and in plenary. Chair, we do wish, however, to share some challenges experienced by our region. Firstly, there were several briefings on the resumed session of the WHA 73 by the Secretariat, with the last one being only 4 days prior to the opening of the Assembly. This created confusion, and as such, we could not prepare effectively. This also resulted in challenges with registration processes. For instance, some member states who, although not members of the General Committee, had interest to follow the meeting as observers, unfortunately could not do so. Secondly, although we are able to complete the agenda within time, the African member states wish to highlight that the grouping of similar items on the agenda hindered our ability to fully discuss some critical issues due to the limited time. A third challenge in that regard is the decision-making process. Some member states had technical difficulties in casting their vote via the virtual platform and had to wait for several rounds before they could do so. This is notwithstanding the constraints of the virtual meeting. In conclusion, Chairperson, we thank the Secretariat for a successful assembly once more, and we are confident that there will be improved organization in the upcoming governing body meetings. I thank you.
Thank you. And now to the United Kingdom.
Thank you. We appreciate efforts to undertake meetings through virtual means during this difficult time. It's been a steep learning curve, and we appreciate the improvements made over the year to how they've run. However, we would support the comments made by Germany and Botswana, emphasising the need to engage fully and in good time with member states on preparation in advance of governing body meetings. If we are to achieve the good discussions and productive governing body meetings for which we strive, member states too need time to prepare and should be involved early in planning decisions. And in this light, we urge rapid decision-making on formats and plans for January. In addition, we were concerned during the WHA at calls to limit Secretariat responses to 3 minutes. Whilst we obviously don't want excessive responses or lengthy pre-prepared statements, we see specific responses to member state questions as a key function of governing body meetings, with member states having the facility to question WHO on progress. There is often a balance to strike, and whilst less can be more, we do want to see the answering of member state questions prioritised. We echo calls made previously to discuss the full and proper role of the EB and would support an EB retreat. A retreat could have creative and productive discussion, which could then come back to formal governing body meetings with outcomes and any proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to the United States of America, to be followed by Australia and Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, moderator. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. The United States would like to join with the other speakers today in congratulating the Secretariat and member states on a successful virtual WHA despite the challenging circumstances. Our delegation greatly appreciated having no evening sessions, and we look forward to more lengthy discussion of format and modalities for the upcoming PBAC and EB under Agenda Item 8 in our meeting today. Great suggestions by a number of the colleagues who've spoken already. I would just also personally like to, as I understand it, when the modalities for last week's resumed WHA came together, a lot of it came together through some great consultations between the Secretariat and Geneva missions, and would just urge the Secretariat to continue to make use, even in these challenging good times, of actually extremely successful, and just want to echo what others have said in terms of getting the modalities down early so that we can be as prepared as possible for the January meetings. Back in capitals, all member states faced unprecedented challenges in combating COVID-19 as they work to prepare and participate in the resumed WHA. Despite these many challenges, the discussions were important and productive and provided critical guidance to the work of WHO across all four pillars and the disparate work streams and technical areas that each of those pillars represent. So we are really grateful for that. There are challenges ahead, and we understand the importance of working together so that we may address them in a collective manner, bringing the best ideas and innovations to the discussions. As we begin our discussions today, we hope to build on the successful WHA 73 and work toward success in the January meetings of PBAC and EB. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now to the distinguished delegate from Australia. Apologies for the interruption, Australia. It seems we're unable to hear you at the moment. If we could just double check the sound there. Thank you very much. If you could kindly start again. Thank you.
Apologies and good evening. Australia acknowledges the difficulty facing the Secretariat in convening WHO governing body meetings in 2020, given the high demands of the fight against COVID-19. And we thank them for their efforts in managing virtual formats and additional meetings. Overall, we're satisfied with the outcomes of the 73rd World Health Assembly. The Secretariat and Member States have shown flexibility and commitment to ensuring that momentum is maintained on important global health decisions and commitments, while working together to confront the pandemic. Nonetheless, I would like to take the opportunity to express Australia's concerns about arrangements for the resumed WHA and provide some suggestions. Firstly, as has already been pointed out by other member states, consultation to confirm the way in which the resumed assembly would be conducted were undertaken very late, making it extremely difficult for delegations to prepare. The WHA is member states' most important decision-making forum, and it is member states who should determine how the agenda is managed. The Secretariat should facilitate this well in advance of the meeting to enable meaningful and inclusive participation by all. The very late finalisation and communication of arrangements made effective preparations practically impossible. This situation should not be repeated. We ask the WHO to draw on their experience from this year to ensure timely communication and improved preparations for the next cycle of governing body meetings. Second, while a pragmatic way to cover the extensive agenda within the virtual format was ultimately settled, the burden on the Western Pacific region has been particularly onerous. While all WHO member states have had to demonstrate flexibility for the year's governance meetings, member states have consistently had to face the most challenging of time slots, with meetings running from late at night through the early hours of the morning. With virtual meetings continuing, we request greater regard be had to the world's different time zones and suggest more effort could be made to balance participation in a way that does not disadvantage one region or another. For example, by alternating opening times to start some sessions earlier and to prioritise the speaking list to take account of the relative impact on virtual participants. Chair, I make these comments conscious that the January board meeting is rapidly approaching. The agenda for EB 148 is ambitious, with a large number of items that will require thorough discussion to fulfil the board's proper function in preparing for next year's assembly. Australia is available and ready to work with fellow board members to help guide the Secretariat in the early and effective settlement of meeting arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. We shall now give the floor to Brazil, to be followed by New Zealand. Brazil, you have the floor.
Member states, the Secretariat, and other participants for the successful conclusion of the 73rd World Health Assembly under the able leadership of Ambassador Kiva Bain. Our governance machinery has shown, Our governance machinery has shown its commitment and ability to continue delivering substantive results for the fight against COVID-19 and beyond. We could not stop, and we did not stop. Another major lesson of this virtual assembly is about time management. By limiting oral statements to only 11 slots, 5 of them on managerial issues, the allocation of time seemed not to favor substantive debates on key public health issues. Moreover, member states, in some occasions, spent a good amount of time listening rather than actively engaging among themselves and with the Secretariat, which is at odds with the intergovernmental nature of this organization. Chairperson, we acknowledge Dr. Tedros' indefatigable work to promote health in the WHO, as illustrated by the announcement of a Council on Economic Health for All. Brazil also notes the launching of the idea of a voluntary repository of pathogen materials and clinical samples to be housed by WHO in Switzerland. We have also noted the DG's commitment to ensuring the equitable access to life-saving vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics during this pandemic. We therefore look forward to working with the Secretariat to organize 2 consultations on the GSPOA before the end of the year. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. We look forward to a transparent and inclusive conversation on the substance and implications of such initiatives for the benefit of the whole membership. Thank you.
Thank you, and we shall now continue with statements by members of the board. There's being Finland, to be followed by Djibouti, and then the Republic of Korea. Thank you, and Finland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
I confirm we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Chair, Dr. Tedros, colleagues, the WHO last week was an exceptional in many forms, and one of the exceptional issues was that it kept its time. So for that, we would like to extend our deepest appreciation to the chairs of the General Assembly and the 2 committees. It was the flexibility of the participants that enabled the handling of the full agenda and the adoption of several significant resolutions and decisions. In particular, Finland would like to extend our appreciation to all delegations on the adoption of the preparedness resolution. On the preparations, we share the frustrations with other member states and would like to support the points raised by Germany, Australia and others on how to do better in the future. A retreat of the EB could provide a sounding board for developing suggestions that could then be put for further consultations with other member states. It is high time that we start the preparations for the January meeting so that we are well equipped to handle those meetings. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and now to Djibouti.
Good morning. Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank the Secretariat for giving me the floor, and I would like to tell the Secretariat that we have the 2 voices that we are hearing. We are hearing the original voice in English as well as the interpretation. So what we are hearing are 2 languages together. So I would like for us to be able to find a solution. So there is an overlap of the 2 languages. He's hearing both languages at the same time.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from Djibouti. We are just working now behind the scenes to try and rectify, and we appreciate you informing us. Thank you, sir. Through the chair, may we propose that we would take the next speaker before coming back to Djibouti. That being said, I should like to give the floor to the Republic of Korea. Thank you.
Conclude the 73rd session of the World Health Assembly. I'd like to extend my gratitude to the Secretariat, acknowledging that it was through the close collaboration and communication between the Secretariat and the Member States that the modality of the 73rd World Health Assembly was able to be set effectively. If there is a possibility that next year's assembly is held virtually or as a hybrid event, we may consider narrowing down the core topics for discussions through silence procedures or informal prior consultation. As the chairs and co-chairs of the committees addresses at the session, I am expecting to see the IPPR and the IHR Review Committee, as well as the IOAC progressing as they have done so far for continuing WHO reform work. But when it comes to an annual evaluation report, as discussed at the 32nd session of the PBAC, an evaluation of WHO response to COVID-19 should ensure that it does not duplicate any ongoing effort in this regard. Many thanks to the House-State Partnership for an in-depth report on various WHO Global Health Agenda items. The Republic of Korea is making efforts to achieve equitable distribution of diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines and put an end to COVID-19 on one hand. On the other hand, we are also planning to provide advice on how to improve global governance regarding infectious disease preparedness and response, together with member states of the G4IDR. I wish to gain a desirable outcomes of the various discussions mentioned earlier at the upcoming 148th session of the EB and the 74th session of WHA. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the Republic of Korea. We should now like to give the floor to the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation, to be followed by Austria and Sudan. And once again, we're trying still to rectify the issues with Djibouti. Thank you very much. And Russia, you have the floor.
Esteemed colleagues, Director General, we would like to thank the Secretariat of the World Health Organization and participants for the successful World Health Assembly. We are satisfied by the results of the virtual session of the World Health Assembly. We support the proposal mentioned by the delegate of Germany, and we pay attention to the need for future development of procedures in the work of the World Health Assembly. We're also paying attention to the fact that the agenda of the next meeting needs to be developed taking into account the interests of all participants of the World Health Organization. This work needs to begin today. We would like to thank the Director General for the initiatives, and we await more detailed information on this. And we note the commitment of the Director General about ensuring equitable access to the vaccine, and we stress the need for swift work to be carried out by the World Health Organization to assess the safety of the vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you. And now to Austria.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, the Director General, colleagues of the Executive Board. Thanks to all members of the Secretariat who have worked so hard during the last months and weeks to make the resumed session of the 73rd World Health Assembly possible. Our special thanks goes in particular to the colleagues from the IT department and the interpreters for doing such a wonderful job. Of course, we are fully aware that physical meetings cannot be substituted by virtual ones, especially when the World Health Assembly is the decision-making governing body of WHO. and is trying to reach a consensus on controversial issues. Therefore, we extremely miss the opportunity of changing views with our colleagues in person. However, given the current circumstances, the virtual format worked surprisingly well, and the World Health Assembly can certainly be regarded as a success. Nevertheless, as there is always room for improvement, we also have some friendly comments for the Secretariat to consider, but in the sake of time, we fully align with the statement already made by Germany on this regard. As I already suggested, and the EP has already agreed during our special session of the EP, I'm looking forward to our deliberation in our EP retreat, how to improve the guiding and steering capacities of the Executive Board as governing body. I'm sure we can convene as soon as possible when circumstances allow to have a face-to-face meeting on this. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the wonderful work our Secretariat and the interpreting technical staffs are doing to help us convene in this format. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Austria. And now to the distinguished delegate from Sudan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm going to limit my intervention by starting that we'd like to commend the great commitment by the member states, the flexibility shown to hold this extraordinary WHA this year, as well as the profound work by the co-chair. We would thank the Secretariat for the tremendous efforts exerted in bringing together this WHO in such timely manner. However, we would like to highlight some of the issues we faced during the proceedings. I'd like to echo other member states' concerns about the late distribution of the program, which created quite some confusion regarding the procedural runnings of the agenda items, as well the limitation of the number of the statements and the merge of the agenda items to be discussed, which limited our ability to adequately discuss and intervene in areas of special concern and interest to us. This is completely understandable given the current circumstances. However, early notice is of paramount importance to ensure adequate and sufficient preparation. Eventually, Sudan acknowledges the complexity of hosting such a virtual session, and again, we would like to commend the Secretariat efforts in making this WHA happen. Finally, we would also like to seize the opportunity to commend the tremendous efforts by the Amur region in supporting the daily briefings of the sessions, as well as the resourceful role they played in preparation to the sessions on daily basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sudan. The Secretariat would like to note that several delegates are encountering some IT technical issues. And with that being said, we would kindly invite those delegates to please reach out to the following phone number and email address so that our IT team is able to support you. Please allow me to read out this phone number. It would be +41 22 791 2111. Alternatively, by email on the following address: gbs support support@who.int. Once again, those delegates who are encountering some issues, including the esteemed delegate from Djibouti, we would welcome you to reach out via phone or email so that we can work together with you to resolve those issues. If I may now suggest that we would try and connect once again with the distinguished delegate from Djibouti. Let us try. Thank you, and Djibouti, you have the floor.
Bonjour.
Good morning. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I would just like to tell you that the technical issue still has not been fixed. We hear both languages at the same time.
concernant le sujet.
It's a little bit difficult for us to understand the discussions. Now, regarding COVID, we are very hopeful due to the upcoming vaccination. This is very much in line with what the previous participants have already said. We would like to know how countries such as mine, so small countries, we would like to know how we could benefit from this new potential vaccine. When we hear how much this vaccine will cost, this really concerns us. It will be very difficult for African countries, for low-income countries to have access to this vaccine. What are the mechanisms in place that would ensure us access to this vaccine? How will the WHO help us procure this vaccine at an affordable price? We hope that we will be able to obtain it as soon as it is made available.
Merci.
The epidemic is under control here, but we would just like to know more about this potential vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you, Djibouti. I should now like to give the floor to China.
谢谢主席。中国代表团感谢秘书处为筹备第73届世卫大会虚会会议所付出的努力。
Chair, we thank the Secretariat for its efforts in preparing for the resumed 73rd World Health Assembly.
中国代表团
The Chinese delegation agrees
德国等成
with
员
the statement made by colleagues from Germany and other member
希望秘书处
states,
在
and
今
we
后
hope that the
机
Secretariat
构的会议期
will
间能
make clear the discussion mode of topics as soon as possible during the preparation for future meetings of the governing body so that member states will have sufficient time to study and prepare their speeches. We also echo Australia's suggestions, such as organizing video conferences by the Secretariat in the future, and we suggested that the time zone of the West Pacific region should be considered. We've noted that at the closing ceremony, the Secretariat put forward a series of new initiatives. We would like to know more details and arrangements about these initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, China. As we see no further hands raised from EB members, we should like to give the floor to those member states not represented on the board. If we could now kindly hand the floor to the esteemed delegate from New Zealand, to be followed by Canada. Thank you, and New Zealand, you have the floor. And New Zealand, just confirming that you would still be in a position to take the floor. Thank you. And New Zealand, sorry, Sir Diamond, we're unable to hear you. It seems you're on mute. Sorry, New Zealand, it seems that you're on mute. We shall now proceed with Canada and come back to you. Thank you. And Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada thanks the Secretariat, fellow Member States and other participants for all their contributions to the successful and fully virtual resumed 73rd World Health Assembly. We particularly note the value of having had a discussion on agenda management prior to the opening of the session, and would agree with Germany and others in regards to agenda management and timeframes for receiving the programme of work. Whilst coming late on in our collective preparations for the Assembly, Member States were nevertheless able to prepare for more than one item being taken up at a time. This is preferable to when the grouped method is used as a stopgap when debates fall behind schedule. While all agreed that this approach to the Assembly would not be precedent-setting, there are lessons we can learn from this experience, particularly on taking up multiple items at a time. We believe that last week's experience shows that taking up a small number of closely linked issues together, as took place in the emergencies pillar, can enrich the ensuing debate. Canada would see the benefit of using this approach at future meetings. At the same time, it is important that we create the time and space for in-depth member state deliberations on agenda items. Taking up several agenda items at once, or items that are only loosely related, did not seem conducive to productive debate. Above all, Canada sees a benefit in having a discussion on an approach to agenda management between member states and the Secretariat, well in advance of future governing bodies. And finally, on the topic of an EB retreat, Canada would note that EB retreats should be undertaken transparently and inclusively. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Canada, and we shall now try to connect once again with New Zealand. Mr. Diamond, you have the floor. Once again, New Zealand, you have the floor, should you be in a position to deliver your statement. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Fabia. Can you hear me now?
We can. Please proceed. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just find my statement. Or with the dear Chair, Moderator and colleagues, Aotearoa New Zealand thanks the Secretariat and especially the IT team and interpreters for your dedication and hard work to deliver, despite the numerous challenges faced, including the ones I just faced, a successful virtual World Health Assembly last week. This pandemic has embedded new ways of working for all of us. The drawbacks of not holding an in-person health assembly this year are well known, including the removal of side events and engagement opportunities with colleagues and with friends. Nevertheless, New Zealand wishes to highlight some of the benefits of this year's entirely virtual World Health Assembly. First, a tighter agenda and clustering of interventions allowed for a more efficient and streamlined assembly. New Zealand supports the future use of modalities that proved so successful this year, such as the clustering of interventions under the key pillars of work. We do recognise also the need for countries to have sufficient time to speak to items of particular concern to them, as has been raised by colleagues from Botswana and from Sudan. We look forward to finding a workable balance between these in future meetings. The virtual assembly was also more accessible for health officials from member states where geographical distance and financial cost are often barriers to participation. This is most true for small island developing states, lower income states, and those of us like New Zealand on the other side of the world. Like Australia, we would encourage consideration be given to working in time zones that others are working in normally, such as in the Western Pacific region. Our fully virtual format also reduced the climate footprint of the Assembly, and we encourage the Secretariat and our fellow member states to lead by example in terms of greener ways that we can work together to reduce our collective contribution to climate. We ask the Secretariat and member states to reflect on these benefits as we consider how we work together in the future. And finally, as several others have mentioned, we would encourage the Secretariat to engage member states as early as they possibly can on special procedures should they be required for future meetings. Tēnā koutou. Thank you.
Thank you very much, New Zealand, and thank you to all 15 member states who delivered their statements. As we see no further hands raised, I shall hand back to the chair. Thank you.
If there are no more requests for the floor, I shall first ask Ms. Jane Ellison, Executive Director of External Relations and Governance, to respond to any questions that have been raised.
I'll just say a few words, and I know the Director General is going to add his comments. Can I just say how much we appreciated obviously the flexibility of our member states in making it a successful assembly. Also, the Secretariat appreciates those kind comments and appreciation that was just expressed. Some very insightful comments there made by member states, of which we've taken very careful note. But it was your commitment to making it work that really was absolutely key. We do note very much the desire for as much certainty as possible with regard to agendas and arrangements for meetings, and I know that this allows better preparation by our colleagues in member states. So very much noted, and the Secretariat will reflect on that and revert in due course. I think we'd all, on behalf of the Secretariat, like to express particular appreciation to the commitment shown by those member states who were working in unsociable time zones. So our thanks and appreciation for that. But again, those comments are very much noted. And so please be assured on behalf of the Secretariat that we have full regard to the comments that have been made. And we will certainly be reflecting on those and speaking again with you as we look ahead to forthcoming meetings. Thank you again, Director General.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jane. I think she has covered the critical issue you raised. I fully concur with what she said, and we take your comments and feedback very seriously. So on the agenda management, we will do everything to improve. And of course, the board retreat that was proposed by you will help. And we have we have supported the idea of the retreat when it was proposed by our good friend Clemens some time ago. So what's now left is to propose a date which is convenient for you, and we can prepare accordingly. But that retreat will be a very good opportunity to discuss on agenda management and other issues you raised today. So I hope we will further discuss this with the board chair, with Dr. Harsh Vardhan, and through consultations with you based on your convenience, having the EB retreat will be a very, very important one. So thank you so much again for your input, for your guidance. Much appreciation from our side, and thank you also for your hard work. That's why our assembly was successful. And as you have said, we're still learning. Everybody's learning on a virtual assembly and virtual systems, and learning from the last one and the previous will be very, very important in order to make the system more efficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tedros and Ms. Jane Allison. As I see no further comments, let me thank the board for this rich discussion. This concludes our consideration of item 3. We shall now take up item 4 of our agenda, report of the Program, Budget and Administration Committee of the Executive Board. The 32nd meeting of the Program, Budget and Administration Committee of the Executive Board was held in a hybrid format from 21st to 23rd October 2020. Document EB 147/2 before you contains a report on items related to matters on which the committee should report to the Executive Board. I shall now ask Dr. Fakal Ben Salah, Chair of the Committee, to brief the Board on the Committee's work. Dr. Ben Salah, you can have the floor, please.
Director General, Chair, members of the Executive Board, Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It was a privilege to chair the 32nd session of the Programme Budget and Administration Committee, which due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to use new methods to carry out our work. Notably, through the hybrid form of the meeting. Some were able to participate in person, but others were able to participate virtually. As I was unable to physically be present at the meeting, my representative from the Permanent Mission of Tunisia provided me with her assistance during the meeting, and I would like to express my deep gratitude to her for that. Thanks to this new approach, the committee was able to examine 18 agenda items over the course of 3 days. And it is with great pleasure that I'm going to present you with some of the main points of the report that you have in front of you. We decided to continue with the practice of creating a report containing clear recommendations, and we requested that in future the Secretariat include in this report of the committee information, and very clear information, on the update of the recommendations formulated by the committee at the previous meeting. Upon opening the meeting, the Director General provided an overview of the reactions of the organization regarding allegations of sexual abuse and exploitation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Director General explained that an independent committee had been established, particularly to quickly establish what had occurred, to assist victims, and to recommend means to ensure that such acts do not recur in the future. And he also provided a brief overview of the efforts that have been undertaken to continue to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. And now for the items on our agenda. First, we examined the report of the Independent Expert Oversight Advisory Committee, which was presented by the chair of this committee. We commended the report, and we also proposed to the Secretariat as a guide to implement the recommendations that have been formulated by the committee, and to continue to strengthen risk management in external offices, and continues to strengthen internal oversight measures, and to continue to ensure that that work be carried out effectively. And following this discussion, the Secretariat presented a general overview of the approach that has been chosen by the WHO to strengthen accountability. And in this regard, the committee commended the measures that have been taken to strengthen risk management and accountability, as well as the establishment of the independent committee to investigate the allegations of sexual abuse and exploitation in the DRC. And we took note of the report, and we proposed to the Secretariat to ensure that the activities aiming to strengthen institutional integrity across all levels of the organization, including at a country level, to place greater emphasis on delegation of authority and robust systems to ensure that there is accountability. and to strengthen prevention measures and to combat sexual abuse and exploitation, and to continue to carry out a dialogue with member states to ensure accountability and institutional integrity, and also to continue to promote an accountability culture, particularly by implementing policies and optimal procedures that ensure that we have a follow-up and monitoring and delegation to ensure that we can have institutional integrity. And the committee then presented its annual report to the Director General on compliance and risk and ethics. And we also proposed to the Secretariat as a guideline to place greater emphasis on statistics in future reports in this area of work, to ensure that the committee has the possibility of examining new policies on sexual abuse before its implementation, and 3, to integrate risk management within compliance measures across all levels of the WHO, and so that we can be better prepared for risks of fraud, and also to develop a note on this matter. We then had a report of the Joint Inspection Unit, and we proposed that in its annual report, the Secretariat includes clarification on the sections dedicated to progress that has been made in the implementation of recommendations formulated in the previous report of the Joint Inspection Unit. And when we examined the reports on the election of the Director General, the chair of this process would provide information on this, and we approved these informal consultations that have been held on this matter. Namely, the date for the beginning of the campaign is not sped up, and then that the second forum for candidates should be held during a round table between candidates and member states. And to that end, we recommended that the decisions on this matter are adopted by the World Health Assembly and the Executive Board. We then considered the annual report on evaluation, and we proposed to the Secretariat as a guideline to include an evaluation on the WHO's response to COVID-19. And we need to ensure that this assessment does not duplicate the work already underway. And we should ensure that all recommendations that come from this assessment and which have been accepted are applied as swiftly as possible. And also to provide support and more significant investment to regional capacity building in terms of follow-up and assessment. And the committee then looked at the item regarding hosted partnerships. We commended the work that has been carried out by hosted partners, and we stressed the importance of the report on their activities. And this is a report that we should continue to provide. And finally, we then looked at the reports from staff associations, and we welcomed this work and the efforts of all WHO staff during this exceptional period of work following the COVID-19 pandemic. And we proposed to the Secretariat as guidance to continue to keep member states abreast of the outcomes of its new working methods, to continue to ensure that to continue to update member states on timelines and implementation of geographical mobility, to continue to support mental health, resilience and well-being of staff, and to continue to improve staff health insurance services as appropriate, particularly for country-based staff. I would like to thank the Executive Board and the Director General for having invited me to present this report. I believe firmly in the importance of the Programme Budget and Administration Committee for the good functioning of our organisation, and I really appreciate this opportunity that has been provided me to present a report of its 32nd session. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Ben Salah. The floor is now open for discussion. I would like to request that the Secretariat moderate the discussion on the virtual platform. Over to Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I should now like to call upon the distinguished delegate from Singapore to be followed by India and Indonesia. Singapore, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Singapore thanks the Secretariat for all its effort in ensuring that the majority of work plans continue to proceed in spite of the ongoing pandemic. Given the size of the organization, the scale of its operations, and the often less than ideal environment in which WHO must work in, we understand that the task is not easy, especially coupled with the budgetary constraints that the WHO is facing. However, the general weaknesses in internal controls and ethics reported in the audit reports, as well as elsewhere, is of concern. Member states have understandably responded by requesting for more updates and reports. WHO is a member state organization, and the organization's ability to execute its responsibilities could be hampered by any sense of mistrust. Nevertheless, we should be cognizant that additional updates and reports are not cost-free. Increasing reporting requirements would divert valuable attention and resources away from WHO's operational work. The organization must also be sufficiently empowered to carry out its duties. As the critical boots on the ground, WHO employees should be able to respond flexibly according to need and not fear lengthy and taxing justifications post hoc. Separately, we note the Secretariat's plans to introduce mandatory training to strengthen controls, oversight and risk management. We also note the plans to increase the responsiveness and agility of the organization. These are relevant and important. These would both provide greater clarity to employees in their work, as well as rationalize the requirements and expectations that member states have of the WHO. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Singapore, and next to India.
Thank you, Chair. We support the objectives of WHO in advocating the need for ethical principles in the global healthcare space. Ethical principles also underline the need for upholding higher standards, strengthening organizational accountability, and monitoring as well as reporting mechanism of the member nations. India also advocates the need for enhanced review and reporting mechanisms between the WHO and the member states, with greater focus on efficiency and transparency in financial flows, as global health at the end of the day remains a multi-stakeholder movement that requires proactive participation from all. Chair, India would like to emphasize the critical importance of implementing policies and creating frameworks that strengthen organizational and financial accountability. This can be established by greater involvement of member states in discussions on budget implementation and spending, with focus on efficiency and transparency in financial flows. We also believe that there is a need for a more inclusive system of decision-making with increased involvement of member nations. There should also be higher focus on enhancing cost efficiencies and value for money principles. All of this will lead to significant improvement in the organizational efficiency, in effectiveness and transparency of health service delivery in an equitable manner, which I believe is our shared agenda. Chair, in light of the pandemic, due to an increase in resources redirected towards health emergencies, we would like to emphasize that non-COVID essential healthcare functions are not overlooked in our ongoing battle against COVID-19. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, India. And now to the distinguished delegate from Indonesia, to be followed by Ghana, Germany, and the United Kingdom. Thank you, and Indonesia, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Indonesia would like to thank the Secretariat for providing the document under this agenda item and wish to deliver intervention regarding the following issues. Firstly, Indonesia takes note and support the recommendation from the Independent Expert Oversight Advisory Committee on its annual report. Strengthening efficiency, transparency, integrity, and accountability for all WHO operations, including at the country level, is imperative. Maintaining regular dialogue with member states is crucial. We agree with the comment made by the IEOEC chair during the 32nd PBAC meeting that WHO needs to work in accordance to its mandate, but simplification needs to be made with regard to the way the organization operates. Secondly, Indonesia also notes the increases of the total base budget for the 2022-2023 is amounting 7.87% compared with the current period. As we stated during the 32nd PBAC meeting, Indonesia emphasizes the importance of the transparency and accountability on the budget distribution, as we wish to get more information regarding the level of flexibility of using emerging information as a guiding principle for program budgeting. At the country level, the development WHO country cooperation strategy is important and should be bottom-up planning process which is based on country needs. At the moment, Indonesia is in the process of developing the 2021-2026 WHO in light of our national health policy, strategies, and plans. Thirdly, Indonesia supports organization initiative to conduct a comprehensive review of the allegation of sexual abuse and exploitation in the context of Ebola response in Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as broader protection issue in the health emergency response setting. Indonesia would like to stress out the importance of conducting the investigation in the most effective and efficient way, so as to not causing more burden to already resources constraining organization. And finally, Indonesia welcomes the report of the PBAC committee and support its recommendation to the executive board to first include an evaluation report about WHO on the COVID-19 pandemic in the evaluation work plan for 2021. Providing such evaluation does not duplicate other evaluation on that topic. And the second, ensure timely implementation of all accepted recommendations of the evaluation. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and now to Ghana.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to deliver the statement on behalf of the 47 African member states. We thank the Program Budget and Administration Committee of the Executive Board for a concise report and commend the committee for including specific instructions to the Secretariat to guide follow-up action in respect of the implementation of the committee's recommendations. We welcome the robust discussions by member states on the report of the Independent Expert Oversight Advisory Committee, the DG's annual report on compliance, risk management, and ethics, and the report of the chair of the Joint Inspection Unit, all of which noted progress made by WHO in implementing many of their recommendations, while calling on the Secretariat to pay particular attention to recommendations identified as not having been sufficiently implemented in previous years. Mr. Chair, we welcome the DG's update to PBAC on WHO's response to allegations of sexual abuse and exploitation in the DRC, and look forward to the finalization and implementation of internal policy in this regard without delay. Knowing such abuses also take place in other WHO regions, we call for a holistic review and reinforcement of existing mechanisms for preventing and addressing sexual abuse cases in all work settings. We note with appreciation the support and cooperation received from member states by Africa's proposed chair of the informal consultations on the evaluation of the elections of the Director General of WHO, Ambassador Alexander Tranqua of Ghana. And we commend the significant contributions we made to that agenda item together. The Africa region notes with satisfaction the contributions that hosted partnerships make to WHO's technical work, its global health agenda, and to improving health outcomes, and therefore support the deepening of such partnerships. We reiterate our appreciation for the hard work and dedication of the WHO staff during the difficult period that followed the COVID-19 pandemic, and we commend their flexibility in adjusting to new work modalities, which the report indicates would be extended to regions and country offices as applicable. We support the report's call for member states to be kept informed about the outcomes of all of the working group of flexible working arrangements and the associated contractual modalities. We support the adoption of the report. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ghana. And now to Germany, to be followed by the United Kingdom and China. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to express my explicit thanks to the PBAC Chair and his Geneva team, who've done really a great job in reporting, obviously, but also steering the debates of the PBAC. Having been in that position myself not too long ago, I know how much stress and preparation that needs, and certainly this was really a great achievement and very successful PBAC with very, very clear recommendations. I don't want to go into substance of any of the topics that the PBAC has focused on, because I don't want to double now what the PBAC has done. But what I'd like to stress is that during this year, the PBAC has introduced a new format of discussions, but also of the report. And many delegations have already alluded to that, focusing on very, very clear outcomes of the discussions and more or less a conclusion with clear recommendations towards the Secretariat. And we believe that's useful and it provides a great tool for oversight and guidance, but only if there's an explicit follow-up by the Secretariat. This is something that we would have liked to see already at this PBAC. We understand that it is difficult, also time-wise, but we would want to express our hope that the Secretariat provides such a follow-up of all the recommendations of this year's PBAC meetings in the reports to come for the next PBAC. So we can see how the work and recommendation and guidance of the PBAC has been followed up by the Secretariat. There are different ways of doing that. It could be an overall report. Maybe it makes most sense if under each of the reports we have an explicit mentioning of how the Secretariat implemented these recommendations, but we believe it's necessary or would be wise to have that included in the reports to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now to the United Kingdom.
Thank you. I'd like to echo the congratulations of others given to Tunisia, both back in capital and in Geneva, for taking up the baton and doing an excellent job of chairing the virtual PBAC this year. The UK are strong supporters of PBAC and its function, and for that reason we commend the changes initiated in January this year by its then chair, our colleague from the delegate from Germany. And as others have said, we therefore welcome this report with its clear recommendations. We very much hope this approach continues going forward in order to maximise the role both of the committee but also to help streamline the work of the Executive Board. And we look forward to seeing the clear action-driven recommendations produced during PBAC 31 and 32, followed up during PBAC 33 in January 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to China.
感谢秘书处准备的文
We
件
thank the Secretary for the
PBAC
document
主
that's
席的报告
prepared and the report by the chair of PBAC. We appreciate the work done by the Secretariat in improving the efficiency and transparency of the work on all levels, as well as its gender balance and prevention of harassment and misconduct. We are concerned about the position of the Secretariat and hopes that the Secretariat will formulate a strategy to address the problems of staff shortages and representation of countries and take concrete actions to change such situation at region level. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And now to Australia.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Australia would like to thank PBAC members, the PBAC chair and all the member states for the valuable discussions. We won't repeat the discussions, but simply want to take the opportunity to express our full support for the PBAC recommendations across all items. We would also echo the thoughts expressed by Germany and the UK in particular, and the suggestion that the Secretariat report back on progress routinely from PBAC meetings. We look forward to hearing from the Secretariat at the January PBAC in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Australia. As I see no further hands raised in the Zoom platform, I should like to hand back to the chair. Thank you.
I now give the floor to Dr. Bernhard Schwartlander, Chef D Cabinet, for his response and comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and distinguished delegates. We very much appreciate the excellent comments made during the PBAC, of course, but also during this board meeting related to that report. We took careful note of all of the points made, and we will incorporate them in our work. In particular, the request made by the PBAC and also now by the board to find a system of reporting back regularly on the progress on decisions and recommendations made by the PBAC, which we very much appreciate. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Bernard. I take it that the board wishes to take note of the report contained in document EB 147/2. I see no objection. It is so decided. We shall refer back to the report when considering the committee's recommendations under the relevant agenda items. This concludes discussion of item 4 of our agenda. We shall now take up agenda item 5.1, review of entitlement of members of the Executive Board. The report is contained in document EB 147/3. The Executive Board is invited to note the report. In its discussions, the Board is invited to consider for recommendation to the 74th World Health Assembly that with effect from 1st July 2021, the maximum reimbursement of travel expenses of members of the Executive Board should be based on the travel entitlements of WHO staff members. The floor is now open for discussion. I would like to request that the Secretariat moderate the discussion on the virtual platform.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can see no hands raised. No. In fact, I should wish to give the floor to the distinguished delegate from the United States of America. Thank you. You have the floor.
We strongly support actions that reduce travel costs of UN agencies, and therefore we welcome the proposal to increase the threshold for travel-related reimbursements for executive board members by aligning those entitlements with the thresholds currently applied to WHO staff. We also specifically support the proposal to curtail the availability of first-class air travel reimbursement for the president of the executive board. The elimination of first-class travel is important not only from a cost-effectiveness perspective, sustainable standard of health for vulnerable populations. We would ultimately like to see WHO in the practice of using member state funds to subsidize the travel of other member states, or at minimum, limit it to assisting executive board members that truly require it for their full and equitable participation. In this regard, we also note that other UN agencies such as WFP, ILO, and FAO have already taken various actions to reduce such expenditures. To conclude, we support the actions recommended in this document EB 147-3, but also expect to continue working with WHO to reduce travel expenditures further, particularly expenditures on other member state travel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to the distinguished delegate of Gabon. Gabon, vous la parole.
You have the floor, Gabon. Chair, Gabon is honored to speak on behalf of the 47 member states of the African region of the WHO, and we'd also like to thank the Secretariat for making this report available. We take note of the innovations introduced by the Director General in the review of the entitlements to a per diem and on travel for the chair and the members of the executive board. The amendments and adjustments proposed to the rights to entitlements of members of the executive board aim to ensure that there is consistency in the travel policy of the WHO and that it aligns with the practices adopted by other United Nations organizations. The African region, therefore, welcomes the efforts of our organization in the streamlining of these expenses linked to its functioning in accordance with the 13th General Program of Work and the program budgets. So the African region takes note of this report. Thank you for listening.
Merci beaucoup. And
thank you very much.
To the United Kingdom. With apologies, distinguished delegate from the United Kingdom, it seems you're on mute. If we could kindly ask that you start again. Thank you.
Apologies, can you hear me now?
We can indeed.
Thank you. I will be brief from now. The UK supports both alignment across the UN, but also a rigorous approach to value for money, and we therefore support the proposed changes to the EU member entitlements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very brief indeed. As there are no further hands raised, we shall hand back to the chair. Thank you.
I thank all the member states for their worthy comments, and now I take it that the board wishes to note the report. I see no objection. It is so decided. Is the board ready to to recommend to the 74th World Health Assembly that with effect from 1st July 2021, the maximum reimbursement of travel expenses of members of the Executive Board should be based on the travel entitlements of WHO staff members. I see no objection. It is so decided. This concludes the board's consideration of agenda item 5.1. We shall now take up agenda item 5.2, evaluation of the election of the Director General of the World Health Organization. There are 3 reports under this item. Document EB 147/4, which provides information received from other intergovernmental organizations within the United Nations system on codes of conduct and or practices applicable to the election of executive heads and compliance mechanisms. The board is invited to note the report and to provide guidance on whether further consideration of the matter is required. The second report, EB 147/4/1, provides the chair's summary and proposed way forward regarding the informal consultations on the evaluation of the election of the Director General of the World Health Organization held on 25th February and 7th July 2020. This report contains a draft decision for consideration. As you may recall, this document was also discussed by the Program, Budget and Administration Committee. The third report is contained in document EB 147/4/2. It provides information on options for counting votes by means of an optical scanner and commercially available off-the-shelf cloud solutions, meeting the need for an enhanced and more interactive web forum. The board is invited to note the report and provide guidance, in particular on the continued evaluation of the use of voting machines with optical scanners for the election of the Director General. I would like to draw your attention to the report of the PBAC contained in document EB 147/2, paragraphs 26 to 30 before you. The floor is now open for discussion. I would again like to request that the Secretariat moderate the discussion on the virtual platform. Over to Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We should now like to give the floor to Ghana, to be followed by Singapore. Thank you, and Ghana, you have the floor. I confirm that we can hear you. Thank you, Ghana.
Thank you.
Ghana, with apologies, it seems that we may have lost you. If you could kindly start your statement from the beginning. Thank you. And our apologies to the distinguished delegate from Ghana. It seems that we're unable to connect with you at this time. Through the chair, if we may suggest to proceed with Singapore, to be followed by the United Kingdom. Thank you, and Singapore, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Can I check that you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, no, we can hear you and see you.
Thank you, Chair. We note that there is no similar code of conduct for candidates standing for executive head positions in the other United Nations agencies which have responded. Singapore is of the opinion that there is no need for a legally binding code of conduct for the election of the Director General and candidates for it. Doing so would mean having to cater valuable resources for monitoring and enforcement. Deciding on thresholds for appropriate disciplinary action may also be time-consuming. Given the resource constraints faced by the WHO and member states, we are also supportive of not bringing forward the date of the announcement of the candidates to avoid lengthening the campaign period. We look forward to leveraging technology for the candidates fora, which will allow member states to better understand the candidates without the need for travel. Singapore urges everyone to adhere to these normative guidelines in order to have a fair and successful election. Thank you, Chair. Back to you.
Thank you, Singapore. And we shall now hand the floor to the United Kingdom, to be followed by Australia and the United States of America. Thank you. And the UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome decisions taken so far to further improve DG election process. This includes changes to the Code of Conduct on such aspects as declarations of funding and other elements which will help level the playing field. We support proposals to improve functionality of the web-based forum, as this will improve access of candidates to member states and vice versa. However, we have further to go if we are to improve the practical process of the election, in particular the voting. We appreciate the current pandemic has impeded studies into improved voting through optical scanners, but we look forward to seeing a more detailed study, including a cost-benefit analysis EB 149 in May 2021. It is important that we continue to strive for ways to improve the voting process as technology develops. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now to Australia.
Thank you. Australia thanks the Secretariat for the report, and we would particularly like to extend our gratitude for facilitating a series of informal consultations on this important matter. We were pleased to see the WHA endorse the outcomes of the consultations, and we support the board also doing so by adopting the proposed amendments to Rule 62 of the Rules of Procedure, as outlined in the agenda paper. At this stage, we don't consider that further work is warranted either on compliance mechanisms or the use of optical scanners for voting. We look forward to further details of the enhanced web forum in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to the United States of America.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, Moderator. First, the United States would like to align ourselves with the statement just provided by Australia and also the comments made by Singapore earlier in this discussion. We too would like to thank the Secretariat for the further work in relation to the process of the election of the Director General. Overall, as we've stated previously, we were satisfied with the process for the last Director General election and the success that meant as a particular element of WHO reform. We believe the evaluation and consultations are leading to agreements on measures that promote efficiency, increased transparency, and meaningful engagement with member states and the Director General candidates throughout the election process. In that vein, we welcome the Code of Conduct as a guide for candidates, but do not support further exploration of the enforcement mechanism. We appreciated the Secretariat's accompanying analysis and recommend that work on this issue close out. On the issue of voting machines with optical scanners, we also recommend no additional analysis be undertaken and propose that we continue to use the paper ballot system that has been carefully choreographed by the Secretariat in the past. Finally, Moderator, we support the proposed draft decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we shall now try to connect with Ghana. A distinguished delegate from Ghana, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry for the interruption. Ghana is honored to deliver this statement on behalf of the 47 African member states. We thank all member states for the support and significant contributions made to this agenda item during the informal consultations held between September 2019 and July 2020, which Ghana was honored to chair on behalf of the African Cabinet. We appreciate the Secretariat's invaluable support in facilitating the process. Mr. Chair, it is recalled that a report of the informal consultations was presented to the Executive Board in February this year. The EB, after considering aspects of the report positively, requested that further informal consultation be held on the length of the campaign period. The consultations concluded with a decision by member states not to bring forward the campaign period, as that would further lengthen an already very long campaign period and put further strain on the resources and time of candidates, member states, and the Secretariat. Member states also agreed to hold a second candidates forum no later than 2 months before the appointment is made by the World Health Assembly, and to tighten the requirements for disclosing campaign activities and funding. Knowing these decisions, as well as others adopted by the resumed session of the 73rd World Health Assembly last week, the Africa Group takes note of the report on the chair's summary and proposed way forward, contained in document EB 147/4, and supports the adoption of the draft decision contained in the annex. We also take note of the Secretariat's report on codes of conduct applicable to the election of the executive heads of other intergovernmental organizations within the United Nations system, contained in document EB 147/4, and the report on the use of optical scanners in a web forum, contained in document EB 147/4. Add 2. We support the continued evaluation of the use of voting machines with optical scanners for the election of the Director General. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ghana. We should now move to those member states not represented on the board. I have the pleasure in giving the floor to Canada.
We thank the Secretariat for the informal consultation. Binding or have compliance mechanisms. Noting the absence of such codes of conduct in other organizations and the lack of options for mechanisms to monitor compliance, we do not see a practical way forward for such a monitoring mechanism. Nevertheless, we would ask the Secretariat if there could be alternative ways to increase the visibility of the code and to emphasize the importance and to underline the expectation that candidates will honor the contents of the code. With regard to optical scanners, like others, we are not convinced that this is the best means. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. As we see no further hands raised, I shall hand back to the Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If there are no more requests for the floor, I hand over the floor to Legal Counsel Derek Walton for responding to the questions and the comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you everyone for those comments, which are very helpful. I know that we have had a lot of separate documents relating to the DG election process, both here and in the Health Assembly, and this is just a reflection of the different decisions which need to be made following the informal consultations. We have heard the feedback from member states about the code of conduct and the exploration, but we began to looking at whether it needed to be made legally binding and to include a compliance mechanism. I hear the feedback that no further work should be done on that for the moment, and so as far as we will not take that forward for the time being. We will, however, take on board the proposal which was made by Canada that we should look for ways of making the code more visible, and the Secretariat already tries to do that. During the last election process, we referred to the code almost every time we sent out a communication relating to the election. We will look at further ways of raising the visibility of the code in the meantime as well. I have to say, though, that in respect of the optical scanners issue, which isn't entirely for my department, we have heard mixed feedback, some suggesting that we should carry on looking at optical scanners and others saying not. I would like to remind you that the informal consultations which were endorsed by the Health Assembly decided that we would continue with a paper-based system, so we will continue to have paper ballots at the election, at least the next election for Director General. The question is whether the IT department should carry on investigating whether optical scanners could be used for the counting of those ballots. Mr. Chair, I'm in your hands as to how we proceed on this, having heard sort of mixed feedback. I'm not quite sure how we would take it forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Derek Bolton. I take it that the board wishes to note the reports. I see no objection. The reports are noted. Is the board now ready to adopt the draft decision contained in document EB 147/4 Add 1? I see no objection. The decision is therefore adopted. This concludes the board's consideration of agenda item 5.2. We shall now take up agenda item 5.3, evaluation of the annual report. The report is contained in document EB 147/5. As you may recall, this item was also discussed by the Program, Budget and Administration Committee. I would like to draw your attention to the report of the PBAC contained in document EB 147/2, paragraphs 31 and 32 before you. The floor is now open for discussion. I would like to request that the Secretariat moderate the discussion on the virtual platform again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Once again, we would kindly remind those wishing to make a statement to please raise their hand in the Zoom platform, as I'm sure you're all familiar by now. I can see the distinguished delegate from Kenya would wish to take the floor. Kenya, to be followed by Bangladesh. Thank you.
On behalf of the Africa region, the evaluation function is critical towards the achievement of WHO's objectives, as it provides the required accountability for achieving results from the use of the resources. If effectively applied, evaluations provide valuable lessons for organizational learning in addition to influencing policy and operational decisions. The African member states thank the Evaluation Office for their annual report and take note of the progress in evaluation activities and the WHO evaluation policy. We particularly welcome efforts by the Evaluation Office to go beyond its main work plan by partnering with evaluation counterparts in other entities, participating in joint evaluation in selected areas of shared substantive and strategic interests. We find such collaboration to be useful, and we hope that it shall increase WHO's overall evaluation level within the system. We also take note of the Evaluation Office human resource capacities, as well as the use of pre-qualified external evaluators, and request the Secretariat to confirm whether the current staffing levels are adequate for the planned activities. Chairperson, The African member states welcome the report on the findings and the recommendations of the completed corporate and decentralized evaluations. This is extremely essential for performance management and organizational learning. We welcome the new approach whereby the directors of the accountability functions jointly reviews and cross-cutting issues, and we encourage that this continues for the times to come. In future, it may be useful for the board to be appraised on this collaboration. With regards to the global action plans for healthy lives and well-being for all, we welcome the attempts to define the evaluation parameters at this stage. We thank WHO for their leadership in coordinating this work. The COVID-19 importance, given its importance in synchronizing the action of these signatory agencies for maximum synergy and collaborations. Similarly, we wish to hear from the Secretariat how the COVID-19 pandemic will influence the future work plan scope and modalities of the Evaluation Office. In conclusion, Chairperson, the African member states take note of the ongoing support to decentralized evaluations. We see the value in strengthening the regional and country level evaluation functions and request WHO to factor this aspect as they finalize the program budget for the next biennium. Lastly, we request the Secretariat to give an assessment of the interrelationship between the centralized and decentralized evaluation systems commissioned and managed outside WHO headquarters. I thank you all.
Thank you, Kenya. And now to Bangladesh, to be followed by the United Kingdom.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, the Bangladesh delegation commends the Secretary for producing a detailed report on the progress made in implementing the WHO evaluation policies, including the organization-wide evaluation work plan for 2018, 2019, and 2020-2021. We note that the Independent Evaluation Office has been working for strengthening evaluation and organizational learning in WHO through implementing 6 action areas of framework of evaluation policy under corporate evaluation function. We appreciate the active engagement of the Evaluation Office in both corporate evaluations and centralized evaluations for establishing an enabling environment and governance. It is heartening to note that WHO is an active member of the UN Evaluation Group and the Interagency Humanitarian Evaluation Steering Group. Its engagement with these bodies is likely to broaden the scope for accountability and strategic learning while ensuring better response to the communities in need. We note that corporate evaluations have been done of some programs, including the NCDs and tropical diseases related programs, the utilization of national professional officers at country level, the 40 years of primary healthcare implementation at the country level, and the initial evaluation of the framework of engagement with non-state actors. We are happy to note that the report of the midpoint formative evaluation of the Global Action Plan for the prevention and control of non-communicable diseases will be presented in the next 148th session of the Executive Board in January 2021. This will help the member states to assess the accomplishments of the 6 objectives of the Global Action Plan. Mr. Chair, the outbreak of COVID-19 has affected almost all the sectors. Primary healthcare service has been disrupted, the mental disorder has increased, and business and economy has plummeted severely. we request WHO to consider evaluating the impact of the pandemic on health and the economy. Also, it should evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of its actions and initiatives taken for the prevention and control of COVID-19. We are aware that the IEOSC and IPPPR are working for an independent evaluation of global COVID-19 response. However, we kindly remind the WHO to avoid duplication of evaluation activities. To conclude, Mr. Chair, the WHO's reform process has been undertaken for improving its performance. The purpose of the evaluations is to translate the findings to organizational learning. We hope the WHO would use the lessons learned and recommendations provided by the evaluations while making policies in future. I thank you.
Thank you, Bangladesh. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this annual report. The evaluation unit will inevitably play a role in the lesson learning from the COVID-19 pandemic. We would like to echo the call of others that this must not duplicate current reviews, but work to fill in the gaps. We're interested to hear suggestions made previously by Australia and Canada for potential focuses on its effect on business continuity or impact on governance, which may be worth exploring. We welcome the appointment of a senior advisor on organisational learning in July and welcome the increased capacity in this important area. Evaluation is not an end in itself, it is a key that lessons are rolled out through the whole organisation to have their full impact on process and culture, and lessons are not learned in silos. Thank you.
Thank you very much, United Kingdom. As we see no further hands raised, we have the pleasure of handing back to the chair. Thank you.
If there are no more requests for the floor, I now hand over the floor to Dr. Anil Ranganathan, the Director General's representative for Evaluation and Organizational Learning, for the responses to the comments and questions raised. Dr. Ranganathan, please, you can have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to EB members, non-EB members, the DDG and colleagues. Thank you for your supportive and constructive comments. In response to some of the specific issues raised, a number of member states raised the issue about COVID-19 evaluation. The PBAC did request an evaluation of the WHO response to COVID-19 in the evaluation work plan, ensuring that it does not duplicate ongoing efforts. And as I responded in the Program Budget Administrative Committee meeting, we would wait for the outcome of the ongoing work of the independent panel on pandemic preparedness and response, the IHR Review Committee and the Independent Oversight Advisory Committee, and any guidance from them on any additional evaluative work that requires to be done before proceeding with an evaluation in 2021. In response to some of the questions and comments that have been made, there was a comment about capacity, and as you have noted and as it was reported in the evaluation report, there has been increase in capacity. There's a new staff member who is position established for decentralized evaluation, and another position of a senior advisor for organizational learning that has been established in July. However, we are in the middle of a process where the Director General's office is undertaking a best-in-class study, and we hope that that best-in-class study will provide further guidance in relation to capacity and resourcing of the evaluation office. There was a comment made about collaboration across accountability functions. This is something we have started, and the Senior Advisor for Organizational Learning will be playing a critical role on this. And this comes back to the point raised by the UK on making sure that lessons learned are not learned in a silo fashion, that they are learned in a much more coherent fashion and applied in a coherent fashion. There was a question about how COVID-19 has influenced the work of the Evaluation Office. It has not had a very strong influence. We've continued to do our work. The only area where we've not been able to take the work forward is work that is related to any country-level activities. For example, our country program evaluations, and also there was a plan for us to do an evaluation of the normative function at country level, and that's been delayed. So these are two aspects that's been delayed, but otherwise we are going ahead as we had planned. There was a comment about making sure that we continue to strengthen regional office and country office evaluation functions, including with budgets, and we take that recommendation on board. And finally, there was a question about the interrelationship between the centralized evaluation function and the decentralized evaluation. How do we work together? In the work plan that we present to you in January of every biennium, at the start of every biennium, we include work plans that were provided to us by the regional offices. So you will see a work plan that includes both centralized and decentralized evaluation. Further, on top of that, we also have an established network called a Global Network on Evaluation, where the different identified evaluation focal points in the region and in the different divisions in WHO work together with us and take things forward. So we have this possibility to work closely together with our regional or country colleagues and also colleagues here in WHO. Chair, I hope I've responded to the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ranganathan, for your worthy comments and your response. May I take it that the board wishes to note the report as recommended by the PBAC and concurs with the proposed guidance? I see no objection. It is so decided. This concludes the board's consideration of agenda item 5.3. We shall now move to agenda item 5.4 on hosted partnerships. The relevant documents are EB 147/6 and EB 147/7. The first document provides updates on the main findings and recommendations of the periodic review of hosted partnerships and major developments in partnerships hosted by WHO. The second document summarizes the contribution of the partnerships for maternal, newborn and child health to improved health outcomes, the harmonization of its work with the relevant work of WHO, and the Secretariat's interaction with the partnership. As you may recall, this item was also discussed by the Program, Budget and Administration Committee. I would like to draw your attention to the report of the PBAC contained in document EB 147/2, paragraph 33 before you. The floor is now open for discussion. I would once again like to request that the Secretariat moderate the discussion on the virtual platform. Over to Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I should now like to give the floor to the distinguished delegate of Burkina Faso, to be followed by India. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chair, Burkina Faso is honoured to make this statement on behalf of the 47 member states of the WHO African region. The member states of the African region would like to thank the Director General for the quality of his report, which provides an overview of the main developments of different hosted partnerships in their periodic review. We welcome the progress that has been made by the Alliance for Health Policy and Systems Research, which has allowed us to work to strengthen health systems, develop research on health policies, and progress towards achieving the objectives of the Astana Declaration. We welcome the important work of the European Observatory on Health Systems and Policies, which continues to serve as a knowledge broker by producing and disseminating factual data to meet the policy needs of member states in order to better inform decision makers in their choices. The African region is particularly delighted by the benefits felt in our area following the very valuable results of this initiative, and above all, the efforts to share and adapt its knowledge broker model with other regions, which is inspired by the African Health Observatory project, which is underway with the WHO Regional Office. The African region notes with satisfaction that the Partnership for Maternal, Newborn and Child Health is contributing significantly to improving health indicators in the region by reducing maternal, child and adolescent mortality. In addition, we commend the strong involvement of civil society in these processes in order to improve and preserve the health and well-being of women, children and adolescents by saving millions of lives, and beyond that, by facilitating the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. To that end, we would like to commend the support of the Secretariat of the WHO and the Regional Director, who have spared no effort in supporting Member States. The African region would like to congratulate the Director General and the UNITAID initiative for their key roles in the significant reduction of prices and the improvement in access to medication, diagnostic products, and other quality basic products for the treatment of HIV/AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis. We would like to support this initiative, and we hope that it continues to benefit from the support of technical and financial partners to achieve even more results that benefit populations. The African region encourages member states to work further to preserve and improve the health of women, children, and adolescents, and to define better policies, projects, and programs to ensure better access to health products and to support and encourage research. States should prioritize these different areas in their policies, strategies, and national plans by allocating necessary resources to that end. The African region invites the Council to take note of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, and I shall now give the floor to India, to be followed by Oman.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate the review of hosted partnerships provided by the Secretariat. India had moved the resolution on digital health in the 71st World Health Assembly, which was unanimously accepted. WHO had also accordingly prioritized the agenda by starting a digital health and innovation department as part of its transformational agenda in April 2019. India had further proposed inclusion of the digital health agenda in the executive board meeting held on February 2020, particularly to review global digital health strategy development, implementation progress, and scope of hosted partnerships on digital health. Chair, major digital health interventions are predominantly implemented in vertical programmatic domains. As a consequence, there is a suboptimal utilization of data-driven insights due to the teams working in silos. The COVID pandemic has brought forth the importance of digital health agenda as a new normal for health service delivery. We would like to draw attention to the significance of hosted partnerships in the arena of digital health. WHO can and must strengthen for health with the support of academia, technical experts from the member states. This will help us fast-track the implementation of the proposed digital health strategy by the Department on Digital Health and Innovation of the WHO. Chair, India believes that hosted partnership on digital health within the WHO itself will enable creation of a global forum in strengthening globally shared digital health agenda and provide optimal support to the member states. Hosted partnerships can essentially help in easier and faster dissemination and implementation of cutting-edge digital technologies like AI, blockchain, IoTs, etc., which have a global impact, so that ultimately no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to Oman.
Dear Chairman, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to participate in the resumed session of the EB 147. Let me start by expressing my appreciations for the exceptional efforts made by the Secretariat to secure the efficient continuation of the work of the governing body of the WHO during these unprecedented and difficult times. On behalf of the government of Oman, I take this opportunity to reaffirm our continued and unwavering support to the distinguished work of the WHO at all levels. And I wish to make a few remarks on the agenda item pertaining to partnership hosted by WHO in general and the partnership for maternal, newborn, and child health in particular. On the maternal, newborn, and child health partnership, I am pleased to hear that it has brought its 10 constituencies together to strengthen their alignment to advocate action to achieve universal health coverage, to make their voice heard, and to align efforts to improve and protect the health of women, children, and adolescents in humanitarian and fragile settings. The important observations and recommendations made through the evaluation of last year have confirmed these improvements. I trust that the noted weaknesses and gaps would be considered by the partnership, particularly by those related to its mandate, role, functions, governance, and internal accountability. Oman has taken note of the contribution of this partnership during the past 15 years, as presented by the report of the Director General, and we wish to express and confirm our need at country level of such teamwork, togetherness, experience sharing, and joint collaboration in this important area, which deals with the most vulnerable groups in our communities. These groups represent the most at risk at all circumstances, and any improvement in their health would have significant impact on the health of the whole community. We also need to be aware of the particular adaptation of the interventions of this partnership in our countries through action reflected by improvement of performance at national program, which could result in successful outcome of these programs. Our expectations of the new strategy 21-25 for this partnership are high, and hope that the new strategy would enable more evaluation in its role to fit for the purpose and make further contribution to achieving the relevant SDGs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oman. And now to Madagascar.
Thank you very much. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, honourable delegates, Madagascar is honoured to take the floor on behalf of the African region on agenda item 5.4 regarding hosted partnerships. The African region, and Madagascar in particular, commends the Secretariat for the quality of the report that has been presented to us, and Madagascar takes note of the Director General's report on hosted partnerships for maternal, children's and adolescents' health, in line with EB decision from November 2020 regarding the improvement of maternal, children and adolescents' health.
Partnership activities are harmonized with other activities of the WHO within the context of the Sustainable Development Goals. Chair, we note that this partnership has been able to gather more than 1,000 partnerships across the world, which is a 30% increase in relation to the year 2015. And WHO's hosted partnerships activities have allowed us to note an increase, a 30% increase in relation with 2015. There has also been an improvement of health results, particularly when it comes to adolescent health and the health of young people. This partnership has contributed to updating a global strategy for women's health and children's and adolescents' health for the period 2016 to 2030. And it has provided advocacy for primary healthcare and universal health coverage, and that this be looked at as a national priority. Chair, as a key organization, the WHO is contributing to this work of hosted partnerships. And we need to comply with the norms and standards and technical procedures of the WHO and other organizations. And we need to look at the budget and reports that are produced on this every year, and we need to ensure that information is shared regarding good governance, and we need to redefine these roles and look at the added values of this, and also partnerships at national levels. And we need to learn the lessons so that we can consolidate these gains. To conclude, 2020 is the final year for this partnership, and we are working on the future partnerships for upcoming years. And we would like to thank the WHO for its leadership for developing these hosted partnerships, and we would like universal health coverage to become a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madagascar. We shall now move to statements by member states not represented on the board. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you listen to me?
Yes,
Thank you. Brazil would like to thank WHO for this updated report on hosted partnerships. As a founding member, Brazil has been a strong supporter of UNITAID since its inception. We believe that UNITAID's focus on fostering innovation and access to medical products against HIV/AIDS, TB, and malaria has been key to accelerating global response to those diseases. In this regard, the partnership with WHO has been extremely productive and mutually reinforcing. As mentioned in the report, scalability and agility are two of the main strategic areas to which UNITAID's Secretariat and Executive Board have been dedicating attention to. It is indeed important to tackle scalability in order to ensure the sustainability of projects supported by UNITAID in the long run. To this end, beyond low and middle income countries, also engaging large middle income countries could be pivotal. In terms of agility, UNITAID has advanced decisively in expediting its procedures for assessment and approval of new ideas for innovation. The new agility mechanism being explored is promising. It is also very encouraging the decision to consider expanding UNITAID's portfolio to other related areas, such as Chagas disease, with great prospects of offering better medical tools to fight this neglected disease. Mr. Chairman, in this moment of grave public health concern, we are pleased to see that UNITAID is working closely with WHO and other important health institutions, particularly through the ACT Accelerator, to the global response. Brazil is convinced that UNITAID's unpaired expertise in the public health arena can decisively contribute to fight this pandemic without leaving anyone behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. As we see no further hands raised, I have the pleasure of handing back to the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. If there are no more requests for the floor, I shall now hand over for comments to Dr. Gordons Silber Schmidt, Director of Health and Multilateral Partnerships, WHO Headquarters.
That strengthen the way WHO is working partnerships. I would like to draw the attention of the board to the fact that the PMNCH strategy 2021-2025 has now been published on their website. So please look at their strategy. Several delegates have been referring to the forthcoming strategy. It has been published since the document was published. Finally, on the proposal from India for a new hosted partnership, I would like to draw the attention of the board that any proposal be formally prepared and proposed to the board, since new partnerships can only be established on a concrete proposal presented to the board, and it would be a decision of the board. Therefore, I would suggest it would require further consultation if in the future such a proposal would be made. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Gordons. I take it that the board wishes to note the reports as recommended by the PBAC. I see no objection. It is so decided. This concludes the board's consideration of agenda item 5.4. We will now take a break and come back at 14:00 hours Geneva time to take up agenda 6.1. Okay. Hello everybody. Hope you all had a refreshing break. Let us now come back to our work. Let us now proceed to item number 6.1 of our agenda. Statement by the representative of the WHO Staff Associations. We shall hear the statement by the representative of the WHO Staff Associations, which is contained in document EB 147/INF.1 before you. I would also like to draw your attention to the report of the PBAC contained in document EB 147/2, paragraphs 34 to 37 before you. The statement will be given by Catherine Crowry Corsini, President of the Headquarters Staff Association. Ms. Catherine, you can have the floor, please.
Thank you. Chairperson, Dr. Vardhan, honorable members of the Executive Board, our Director General, Dr. Tedros, distinguished delegates, and dear colleagues. This statement is read on behalf of the staff associations of WHO Pan-American Health Organization, UNAIDS, and IAC. 2020 has been a challenging year. The world is facing an extraordinary crisis, and we wish to express a profound sense of solidarity with all the countries and communities affected as this pandemic continues to spread around the world. This pandemic has shown us that overnight, rapid transformational change and remarkable international collaboration is possible. It is also demonstrating how much we depend on each other as one world, especially in support for our health care systems, therefore making the role of WHO even more essential. We want to acknowledge the support our Director General and the organization as a whole received from you, our member states, during this period. Currently, we have had to closely work with management to respond to the needs of staff arising from the current situation. We particularly appreciate the collaboration we received from the Director General and the senior management in terms of flexibilities that we requested. Dr. Tedros, we know that you had the pandemic to deal with and all these the complications that came with it, but you remained accessible and available to your staff, and for that, we sincerely say thank you. I will now go through the issues we highlighted in our written statement. I'll start with the WHO transformation. Our Director General had promised staff that there will be no positions lost as a result of the transformation. As reported in our statement, we are pleased to confirm that the WHO transformation at headquarters did in fact not result in any job loss. We reiterate what we shared in our statement, that the process in headquarters is being replicated in regional and country offices. Besides, the purpose of having a transformation that increases our impact at country level, it is essential that this process ensures alignment of WHO across its regional and country offices. The staff associations therefore hope and expect that the process in the regions and countries will be shorter and that the outcome of job security will be replicated across the board. And finally, we would very much welcome an evaluation of the whole process in the foreseeable future by an independent external provider. Internal justice. In order to gain trust in the internal justice system, we need to ensure that it is efficient, effective, and provides equal accessibility to WHO's workforce in all duty stations. Fraud can very quickly become a great liability to any organization if not properly prevented or dealt with in a timely manner. Likewise, the mental health of our workforce is at stake if serious issues like harassment in all of its forms, discrimination and bullying, and racism are not dealt with in a fair, transparent, and most importantly, in a timely manner. It is unacceptable that today, case investigations and resolutions on average still takes more than a year to conclude. We can all agree that the internal justice system is an important part of the organization, and we believe that this area should be taken seriously and therefore be provided with the required and necessary resources to strengthen it so that it becomes as efficient and effective as it should be. This is why we call upon member states and management to ensure that the resources required to make the system function at its best are put in place, particularly with respect to the investigations. We note that an increase in human resources alone does not translate to improved performance. Internal justice structures like IOS needs the same level of accountability that we see in the rest of the organization. A clear work plan, clear timelines for investigations, and establishment and monitoring of key performance indicators. Considering IOS independence from the management, we would suggest that this closer oversight should come from member states through the Independent Expert Oversight Advisory Committee, IEOAC. The IEOAC should be resourced to hire an external party to continuously audit IOS investigative functions and iOS as a critical resource for the organization and itself must be held accountable for its performance. Geographic mobility. We confirm that WHO is on the right track towards a comprehensive and implementable mobility policy, and we appreciate the simulation exercise recently launched and we look forward to the findings of this exercise. However, a few areas still remain a concern to the staff associations and which need to be addressed. The inability for staff to apply to higher grade positions for which they are eligible. This, coupled with positions being sent through the compendium before being internally advertised, could make upward career progression more difficult than it is at present. The absence of clear criteria to ensure that deferral requests are handled in a transparent and systemic manner. The policy's reluctance to ensure that WHO staff members who are recognized spouses to each other can move together. The exclusion of interested long-term temporary staff from being able to apply to fixed-term positions within the mobility compendium. With this regards, the implementation of any mobility, we continue to believe that implementation of the policy should begin after the described HRD support and implementation mechanisms, which will likely be developed and tested during the simulation exercise, are in place. Out of the near 1,000 staff who will be overdue to mobilize when the policy goes into effect, enthusiastic people from this group should be allowed to rotate first. After volunteers, clear criteria should determine the order in which staff mobilize. Additionally, the criteria on which mobility advisory boards operates, process deferrals, approving matches, etc., should be clear and openly available to all staff. Most importantly, and as mentioned in our statement, the organization is currently discussing the flexible working arrangements and contract modalities, which we believe will have effect on the mobility program. We therefore hope that the outcomes of these two task forces will be taken into consideration before mobility is launched. Staff health insurance. We value and appreciate the efforts of our SHI colleagues in improving all staff health insurance services and meeting the needs of staff and their families. We also would like to appreciate the approval by the Director General of the pilot initiative in the African and Eastern Mediterranean regions to expand access to treatment with over 500 healthcare providers. This will facilitate direct payments and discounted prices. We believe that the initiative should be expanded to other regions in the not too distant future. We would also like to show our appreciation for the decision taken by the Director General in 2019 to revise the composition of the Staff Health Insurance Global Oversight Committee to have a greater representation from the staff associations, and also acknowledge the plan to have new strength and governance of the staff health insurance by January 2021, which will give staff associations a greater voice in the governance. By having us in such important areas, will ensure that we bring in concerns from all regions so that they are discussed and addressed in a timely manner. We urge management through the staff health insurance colleagues to ensure the following issues are addressed. Many countries do not have good healthcare systems. However, all participants of the WHO staff health insurance should have access to healthcare, as lack of access to proper healthcare could represent a serious risk to health and well-being, especially when health emergencies arise. Access to healthcare providers of many locally recruited country-based staff are significantly delayed by demands for immediate high upfront payments. Having the WHO health insurance card recognized widely by healthcare providers would allow staff to have the needed immediate healthcare. The International Civil Service Commission. In our statement to you in February this year, we had requested for a reform of the ICSC through a review of its methodologies for setting UN staff salaries and benefits. We also requested your assistance in tasking the ICSC with ensuring some measures of equality in the salaries of general staff globally and reducing the differences in salaries between international, professional, and general service staff, where the currency of the host country is unstable and subject to fluctuation and deflation. We have been informed by the Federation of International Civil Servants Associations, FICSA, that the ICSC early this year formed a working group to discuss and review these outstanding issues. It is hoped that the new methodology will be presented to the Commission for consideration at its 92nd session so that it can be forwarded to the UN General Assembly at its 76th session in 2021. Policy on prevention of harassment. We welcome the decision by management to combine all forms of harassments in one document, now called the Respectful Workplace. We appreciate the inclusion of comments from the staff associations in the policy. We also appreciate the creation of a team in headquarters to work on diversity and inclusion policy, which will deal with all kinds of discrimination, and are thankful that the staff associations are included in this team. We look forward to the final recommendations to the Director General on this area. Flexible working arrangements. Needless to say, the current pandemic has taught the world many things. One of the lessons from the pandemic is remote working. We are glad that our Director General has asked for a task force comprising of management and staff associations to discuss and propose an all-inclusive, best-in-class, flexible working arrangements. We hope that the task force will have final recommendations as soon as possible, especially as we continue to see no change to the current pandemic situation and the need for staff to continue working remotely. We shall provide you with the updates during the next board, of course, and the outcome of this task. We thank you for your time and careful considerations of the issues we bring to your attention today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Catherine. The floor is now open for discussion. I would like to request that the Secretariat moderate the discussion on the virtual platform.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. A reminder to those wishing to make a statement and to kindly raise their hand in the Zoom platform. With that being said, I should wish to hand the floor to Australia. Thank you. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, Moderator. I take the floor to reiterate Australia's sincere gratitude and appreciation to all WHO staff for their dedication and tireless work, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. We thank the representative of the WHO staff associations and all the staff who contributed to the statement. It is our shared responsibility to ensure that staff voices are heard and acted upon, and that the WHO workplace is an enabling and safe environment, free from discrimination and all forms of harassment, supported by strong internal justice systems. In this regard, Australia fully endorses the recommendations of the PBAC on this agenda item. Chair, I would also note the close connection between this item and the annual report on human resources. While the PBAC considers both items with significant overlap in the corresponding discussions, they are then separated, one for WHA and one for the EB. We suggest further attention to this at the PBAC's next meeting, with consideration to the possibility of taking the two items together for a more coherent approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Australia. We should now move to statements by member states not represented on the board. That being said, I have the pleasure of handing the floor to the Netherlands.
Thank you, Chair. As this is the first and only time the Netherlands will speak during the report, first we wish to commend you and the Secretariat for your excellent job during these virtual meetings. The Netherlands thanks the representative of the WHO Staff Association. Your report provides people with valuable insights in the effect of the processes and policies we discuss in the governance forum. Staff, WHO, management, and member states share the same goal: an impactful WHO for the people we serve in a safe and effective working environment. The WHO transformation rolled out to that effect should be implemented across all 3 levels. We would welcome an independent evaluation at an appropriate time. We take note of the staff association signaling improvement in effectiveness and efficiency in the internal justice system, but that a lot remains to be done. It's therefore unfortunate that the momentum for policy review and reform on misconduct has reduced. We hope that the Secretariat can facilitate an in-depth discussion around accountability and oversight in the next board as requested by the Assembly. We recommend supporting this discussion with a report on the budget needs and gaps in the enabling functions. The possibilities for teleworking have been tested and proven in the past months. We hope the lessons learned will find its way in an updated policy. And on the particular circumstances of work in the last few months, last but certainly not least, we want to thank WHO staff for their incredible work responding to the pandemic while keeping the other programs running. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to the Netherlands and Australia. As we see no further hands raised, I shall hand back to the chair. Thank you.
In the absence of any further comments, I take it that the board wishes to note the statement of the representative of the WHO staff associations and concurs with the proposed guidance. I see no objection. It is so decided. This concludes our discussion of agenda item 6.1. I understand that the staff associations want to comment, so I give the floor to them.
As you know, we addressed also the PABC, the PBAC committee before, and discussions happened and they have made their recommendations. So first of all, thank you so much to the PABC for the recommendations they made to the executive board. And I would also like to thank you, member states, for the positive comments that you have provided, and especially the recognition to the WHO staff at these difficult times that they continue to upload the directives of WHO. So thank you so much, member states.
Move on to the next. Thanks, Ms. Catherine, once again. We shall now move to item 7 of the agenda, Matters for Information, Report on Meetings of Expert Committees and Study Groups. The report by the Director General is contained in document EB 147/9, and I propose that we consider all of the meetings together. In this regard, I would like to invite comments on the following. The 54th Expert Committee on Specifications for Pharmaceutical Preparations, which met in Geneva from 14th of October to 18th of October 2019. The Expert Committee on Specifications for Pharmaceutical Preparations advises the Director General in the area of medicines quality assurance and provides regulatory tools for medical products. The recommendations, public health significance and implications for WHO appear in paragraph 2 through 9 of document EB 147/9. The full report appears in the WHO Technical Report Series number 1025/2020. The 88th report of the Joint FAO WHO Expert Committee on Food Additives, which met in Geneva from 22nd to 31st October 2019. The recommendations, public health significance and implications for WHO appear in paragraph 10 through 21 of document EB 147/9. The full report appears in the WHO Technical Report Series number 1023/2020. The 70th report of the Expert Committee on Biological Standardization, which met in Geneva from 21st to 25th of October 2019. The Expert Committee on Biological Standardization reviews developments in the field of biological substances used in human medicine, which include vaccines, biotherapeutics, blood products and related substances, and in vitro diagnostic reagents. The recommendations, public health significance and implications for WHO appear in paragraphs 24 through 33 of document EB 147/9. The full report appears in the WHO Technical Report Series number 1024/2020. The 42nd report of the Expert Committee on Drug Dependence, which met in Geneva from 21st to 25th October 2019. WHO is mandated by the International Drug Control Conventions to evaluate the scientific evidence related to dependence, abuse, and harm to health of psychoactive substances and their therapeutic use, and make recommendations on whether psychoactive substances should be placed under international control. This mandate is fulfilled through the Expert Committee on Drug Dependence. The recommendations, public health significance and implications for WHO appear in paragraphs 35 through 42 of document EB 147/9. The full report appears in the WHO Technical Report Series number 1026/2020. The floor is now open for discussion. I would like to request that the Secretariat once again moderates the discussion on the virtual platform. Secretariat, you have the floor now.
Monsieur le Président, nous avons l'honneur de prendre la parole.
President Gabon is honored to speak on behalf of the 47 member states of the African region of the WHO on the report on the meetings of committees of experts and study groups. We would like to congratulate the Director General for the quality of his report, which highlights the recommendations made by the various expert committees and study groups within the framework of the specifications linked to pharmaceutical preparations, the evaluation of veterinary drug residues in food, and the biological standardization and drug dependence. We would like to recall the importance of pharmacopoeia, the quality of pharmaceutical products, and the security of the health security of foods in our health systems for greater resilience. We note with satisfaction the guidelines and decisions adopted on the best practices for the manufacturing of pharmaceutical products and the implementation of management systems for quality by the national authorities and regulators. We invite the Secretariat to support member states more with the mechanisms for assurance and assessments of quality, and to strengthen laboratory capacity for control laboratories. And with regard to the problem of the evaluation of health risks on chemical products present in food that member states face, the African region would like to call on the WHO to provide greater information on the aspects, the general aspects for the evaluation of risks. Elsewhere, the African region appreciates the guidelines provided by the WHO on the evaluation of vaccines in terms of quality, safety, and efficacy. This is an important stage. When we look at the 2014 WHA 67.21 document on biotherapeutic products, the African region encourages the Secretariat to support the regional offices and countries in awareness raising amongst populations at risk on the dangers of psychoactive substances and drug use. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gabon. And now to Bangladesh, to be followed by Colombia.
Mr. Chair, Bangladesh delegation thanks the Secretariat for the reports on meeting of expert committees and study groups. The 4 reports under consideration: specification for pharmaceutical preparations, evaluation for certain veterinary drug resides in food, biological standardization, and drug dependence, provide us with important and useful insights. Surely, the recommendations and observations have considerable significance for public health policies at the national as well as global levels. Among the 13 guidelines and decisions of the Expert Committee on Pharmaceutical Preparations for the quality assurances of the medicines and regulatory tools for medical products from development to distribution to patients, I would like to highlight particularly the importance of building good storage and distribution facilities. Many low and middle income countries have severe capacity constraints in these areas. Also, there are glaring absences of quality control laboratories essential for quality pharmaceutical products. Therefore, we request WHO and other international development partners to support us in building these infrastructures for a robust distribution network for vaccines and medicines. We also stress on the implementation of the committee's recommendation for the regulatory guidelines to multi-source medicines globally in order to facilitate access of all peoples of all countries to quality medicines in the spirit of leaving no one behind. About the recommendations of the Expert Committee on Food Additives, we acknowledge the serious public health risks by the exposure to residues of veterinary drugs in food. The implementation of its recommendations would help in ensuring fair practices in food trade globally. It would also contribute to improving national and regional food safety standards. We recommend the members of all the committees and study groups for providing the WHO and the member states with updated scientific knowledge and proper guidance in terms of newer technology, laboratory products, vaccines, medicines, and related substances. We urge upon Director General and the Secretary to implement the recommendations of the committees for the greater public health interest. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Bangladesh. And now to Colombia.
Buenos días. Good afternoon. We'd like to thank the Director General for the presentation of the report on that covering the experts committees and the study groups of the governing board, and in particular the presentation of the recommendations made by the various working groups such as drug dependence, the residues of certain veterinary medicines in foods and others. We consider of utmost importance the suggestions and recommendations of the groups of experts, bearing in mind the importance of saving lives, preserving lives and the health of people, as well as the importance of the process of drafting the global and regional guidelines, which without doubt will impact on the strengthening of the national policies of our countries, who take up as a reference point the guidance and recommendations of the World Health Organization. We would also like to highlight the importance of the work coordinated between the various agencies of the United Nations system, bearing in mind that these recommendations go beyond the area of health and need the support of other sectors for their implementation, aiming at putting the health of people at the center of decisions. Given the current context, it's particularly important that the deliberations and recommendations of the Expert Committee on Biological Standardization be taken into account, and so we recommend that we provide all the support to this committee and we bear in mind the recommendations. Finally, we call on the World Health Organization to ensure that the recommendations and suggestions of the expert committees can be included in the various programs put forward, and will therefore ensure that they work within the framework of the organization and have been taken from the panels of experts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colombia. As we see no further hands raised in the Zoom platform, I shall hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Do they want to respond to the questions? If there are no more requests for the floor, I am handing over the floor to Naoko Yamamoto, ADG Healthier Population, for responding to the suggestions that have been made.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, the member state, about the acknowledgement about the importance of the expert committee. There's strong support for them. Especially when we talk about the food safety area, talk about the implementation of the recommendation. We work with the FAO and Richard. You know that we jointly work for the Codex Alimentarius, and the expert committee's recommendation is the core of that work. In addition to that, the member states has already adopted the resolution of the food safety in the WHA 73, and we are going to work together with member states to come up with a global strategy for food safety and system to translate the recommendation to the implementation at the country level. So again, thank you very much for your support. Over to Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Naoko. Now I hand over the floor to Clive Ondari, Coordinator, Health Product Policy and Standards. Over to Clive.
Thank you, Chair. Just wishing to confirm that the floor has been given to Dr. Ondari. Dr. Ondari, you have the floor now. Thank you.
Dr. Ondari, you can have the floor, please.
Ondari, you would have the floor. It seems we may be experiencing some technical issue here, but we beg your indulgence. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Now I hand over the floor to Dr. Gillies Forte, Coordinator, Access to Medicines and Health Products. Dr. Gillies, you can have the floor, please. Dr. Gillies.
This is Ondari's.
Dr. Ondari, it appears that you would still be muted at this stage. If we could kindly ask that you check on your side and that you would commence your statement once again. Thank you very much. And Dr. Ondari, once again, our apologies. It seems that we're not able to hear you at this stage. Through the chair, if I may suggest that we would proceed with Dr. Gilles Forte, and we shall come back to you, Dr. Ondari. Thank you very much. And Dr. Forte, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, excellencies. Thank you for the comments made on the report from the Access to Medicines and Health Product Division. on the expert committee on pharmaceutical preparations, on biologicals, and on drug dependence. Thanks to the comments from Gabon on behalf of the Afro region. And Bangladesh, points are taken with respect to the request for collaboration for improving supply chain management and procurement, and including for medicines that are relevant for COVID-19. And as you know, production of new therapeutics and new vaccines will be critical for expanding the access and allocation of those important technologies. As far as the comment from Colombia, with respect to the ECD, thank you very much for the support to the work of the expert committee. As you know, this report was related to the meeting, the 42nd meeting of the ECDD, which carried out a review of 13 new psychoactive substances that were recommended for international control, and all these WHO recommendations have been endorsed by the Commission on Narcotic Drugs in March 2020. The World Health Assembly decision 70.18 indeed recommends more collaboration and more coordination between the UN agencies and civil society for tackling the world drug problem. And this collaboration is taking place particularly for the work of the expert committee on drug dependence, and we receive support from UNODC and INCB for sharing information on those substances. So again, thank you very much for all the contributions from member states, and I revert to you, Mr. Chair. Over. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Gillies. Now we can once again go back to Clive Ondari ji. Mr. Clive Ondari, you can have the floor once again. Well, we feel sorry we couldn't hear you, Mr. Clive. Anyway, thanks, Mr. Clive, Naoko, and Dr. Gillies. And on behalf of the board, I wish to thank the experts who have taken part in these meetings, and also wish to request the Secretariat to follow up on their recommendations as appropriate in the implementation of the organization's program. This concludes our consideration of agenda item 7. We shall now consider item 8, future sessions of the Executive Board and the Health Assembly. As you may recall, we considered this item when we met in May and adopted 3 draft decisions on the dates of the upcoming Executive Board and the Health Assembly as contained in Decision EB 147-6, place, date and duration of the 148th session of the Executive Board and the 33rd meeting of the Program, Budget and Administration Committee of the Executive Board. Decision EB 147-7, place, date and duration of the 74th World Health Assembly and the 34th meeting of the Program, Budget and Administration Committee of the Executive Board. Decision EB 147-8, limitations to physical meetings of the governing bodies, contingency arrangements. I would like to propose that we turn back to this item to consider the format of the PBAC 33 and EB 148, which will be held in January 2021. I shall give the floor to the Director of Governing Bodies, Dr. Timothy Armstrong to provide us with more information on this subject. Dr. Armstrong, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hashvazam, Excellency, Chair of the Executive Board. Thank you. Just recalling the three decisions you mentioned, they are EB 1476, plate dates and duration of the 148th session of the Executive Board, and the 33rd meeting of the Program Budget Administration Committee of the Executive Board. Recalling that the Executive Board decided that its 148th session should be convened on Monday, 18th of January at WHO headquarters and close no later than Tuesday, 26th of January. And the board further decided that the PBAC would hold its 33rd meeting from Wednesday to Friday, 13 to 15 January. Recalling EB 1477, place, date and duration of the 74th World Health Assembly and the 34th meeting of the Program Budget and Administration Committee of the Executive Board. The EB decided that the 74th WHA should be held at the Palais des Nations in Geneva, opening on Monday the 24th and should close no later than Tuesday the 1st of June. That's Monday the 24th of May, of course, closing no later than June, 1st of June. The board further decided the PBAC would hold its 34th meeting on Wednesday 19 of May to Friday 21st of May. Now, of course, the current situation we find ourselves in, the Executive Board in EB 1478 on limitations to physical meetings of the governing bodies, contingency arrangements, decided that in the event that limitations to physical meetings preclude holding of the 74th World Health Assembly, the 148th session of the Executive Board, and the 33rd and 34th meetings of the PBAC, as envisaged, adjustments to the arrangements for these governing body meetings should be made by the Executive Board or, exceptionally, by the officers of the Board in consultation with the Director General. Now, I think, Chair, we heard already this morning in feedback from the Member States, Executive Board and other Member States on the nature of the meetings that we've had recently, particularly the WHA. We've had recently experience with fully virtual meetings, hybrid meetings, the special session of the Executive Board, for example. In January of next year, there are three possibilities: face-to-face meeting under normal conditions, a hybrid meeting, or a fully virtual meeting. And I think if we've heard correctly from the Executive Board this morning, a request that some certainty, some predictability be provided to you in due time in order for Member States to make the necessary arrangements, be they both technical and logistical, for your active participation in meetings. So I think given the epidemiological situation we're facing ourselves in, either a hybrid or a virtual meeting would be the modalities that would be available to us in January. And Chair, through you, I would like to ask if we could hear from Member States now what the views would be, and in particular if there is a certain time period under which we should have as a deadline in order to inform Member States if no decision is made by the Board today on the way forward. With that, Chair, I hand the floor back to you and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. The floor is now open for discussion. I would once again request that the Secretariat moderate the discussion on the virtual platform.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I should like to give the floor to the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Moderator. Happy to get the discussion going and appreciate governing bodies for that overview. Looking at where we are now, it seems reasonable that we should consider January for January's board meeting, that we should consider a virtual format and already be planning for that. You know, hopefully conditions could warrant that we could move to a more in-person format for the later in the year meetings, but for January, it makes sense. Just to follow up on Dr. Armstrong's question as well, I would say that for us, we need to have, as others have spoken earlier around WHA 73, we think that we need to have these modalities finalized by mid-December so that all member states will have plenty of time to prepare. I would also like to just reiterate a couple of the thoughts that came from earlier in the discussion, and just to endorse, given that we've just gone through this this virtual meeting with the time that we have here in the Americas region, we would like to add our voice to those calling for consideration for modifications to schedules in future upcoming meetings to potentially allow for some burden sharing across regions, given that the current timing, potentially beginning later than 10 a.m. Central European time, because the current timing is very difficult both for the Americas and for Wipro regions. Just to say our view, we believe that the upcoming PBAC and EB meetings are going to have critical issues before them, including important issues of WHO strengthening, and we very strongly support those WHO strengthening efforts, and would like to see as much of that low-hanging fruit harvested as much as possible, even starting in our January sessions. And so it would be nice to see more intersessional work planned, whether that's with capital representatives as possible, or with the Geneva representatives, as I mentioned earlier in today's meetings. Also want to just take this opportunity to really support the proposal for a board retreat. This is really an excellent idea in terms of strengthening the EB governance and leadership in WHO. Finally, just another note, something that is going to take longer to address, but the issue of progress reports, even in the normal year, progress reports are very rarely looked at with the seriousness that they deserve by member states. And so finding a way in these as we're discovering new methods of work to tackle those progress reports in a more meaningful way, either through the board or some other means, we would be very, very open to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to the United States of America, and I shall now hand the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you. I just wanted to strongly echo what the US has just said in terms of making a decision early on how we're going to do this. In terms of the executive board meeting in January. I think we need to be realistic, and I think it's probably highly unlikely we're going to be in a situation where people are going to be able to engage in person in a fair way, and it seems to us that making a call early that we're just going to do this virtually and allowing everyone to prepare in a timely manner is the most important thing. And we, as much as any of you, would really like to be there and to meet everyone and to talk properly face to face. But I think the important thing is to give ourselves the time to prepare for a really productive discussion. So just to echo that point, thank you.
Thank you very much to the United Kingdom. As we see no further hands raised in the Zoom platform, I shall hand back to the chair. Thank you.
So, thank you, Secretariat. If there are no more requests for the floor, I would like to give back the floor to Dr. Armstrong to respond to the suggestions that have been given. Dr. Armstrong, you can have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Chair, and with apologies, we did see a last-minute hand go up from the Russian Federation. So before giving the floor to Director of Governing Bodies, with your permission, we would like to hear from the Russian Federation. Thank you, and Russia, you have the floor.
Уважаемые коллеги,
Thank you.
Dear colleagues, I would like to thank you for having given me the floor on this item. Given the epidemiological situation right now, we echo the proposal that the US and the UK have made, which is to hold the EB as well as the session of the World Health Assembly, either in hybrid or in a virtual format. I think that we do need to take into account the situation. I think that the hybrid method is probably the best that we could do for the WHO and the EB, but if it is not possible, of course, we would be in agreement for the meeting to be held in a virtual capacity. Thank you.
Dr. Timothy, you can have the floor now.
Thank you.
Dr. Armstrong, you can have the floor now and respond.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the US, the UK, the Russian Federation for those comments. We've taken those comments on board. We will have a discussion with the Executive Board Bureau, the officers of the board, and come back to you in due course with a proposal for the format of the upcoming Executive Board. We will, of course, also heed your request to ensure that this is done in a timely manner such that all delegations can prepare for the Executive Board in January. So with that, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I hand the floor back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. And this concludes our consideration of agenda item 8. Distinguished delegates, we have now come to the end of the 147th session of the Executive Board. Before closing the meeting, I would like to invite the Director General to say a few words. Dr. Tedros, you can have the floor, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Vardhan, Chair of the Executive Board. Thank you so much for your leadership. I would also like to thank all board members and non-members for their inputs and guidance on all items. We will take your feedback, guidance, and inputs very, very seriously. And also I would like to thank all our colleagues here for their hard work, all my colleagues. And thank you so much again for this, and hope to have the retreat either before January, otherwise our board meeting will be next January, and we will prepare very well, and the agenda management will be central, so you can have the documents and the agenda well in advance. Again, thank you so much from our side.
Thank you, Dr. Tedros. Excellencies, my colleague Vice Chairs, our Director General, Regional Directors, distinguished delegates, esteemed partners, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the close of another successful session of the Executive Board. The year 2020 has been a year to remember, where we have met and deliberated at least 7 times for the governing body meetings of the organization. These include the January Executive Board and PBAC meetings, virtual de minimis sessions of the Health Assembly and Executive Board in May, special session of the EB, and 32nd meeting of PBAC in October, the resumed session of the Health Assembly, and now the EB. For this wonderful last session of the year, I sincerely appreciate the support extended by my colleague vice chairpersons and thank them for their full cooperation in successful conduct of this resumed session of the Executive Board, despite the difficulties associated with holding a virtual meeting cutting across several time zones. The rich and proactive interventions of the member states have made this possible. Their suggestions and inputs will be very useful in guiding the work of the organization as we move forward with strengthened resolve to tackle this once in a generation pandemic affecting all aspects of our lives. I acknowledge the role of our sister UN agencies, intergovernmental organizations, partners, and non state actors. Appreciate the commitment and support extended and thank them for their keen engagement and participation. Amid the challenges we face, it was a privilege to spend time with all of you and listen to the experiences and best practices being followed worldwide. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the deliberations and statements made reflect the immense and deep engagement of EB member states and other partners in coordinating, leading, and supporting not only the global response against the unprecedented pandemic but also other public health challenges. This was particularly seen during your interventions on agenda items on the managerial, administrative, financial, and staffing matters. The member states' interventions and rich inputs affirm the resolve of the Executive Board to further strengthen the response and work towards building a healthier, secure, and prosperous world. Today's discussions and suggestions will strengthen our collective response and will encourage global cooperation. Here, let me also applaud the WHO staff at all three levels, headquarters, regional, and country offices for their sincerity and dedication. Your work is valued not only by us, but as seen in the trustworthy ratings of the authentic scientific information related to the disease by the general public across all countries. I appreciate the Director General of the WHO, regional directors, and the Secretariat team for the energy and insight they have displayed in the ongoing support to member states, not only in emergency response, but across all spheres. Our sincere thanks to the translators and the ICT team for their hard work they put in to ensure that this virtual EB session was seamless. With their tiring efforts, this wonderful session has now come to a conclusion. To resonate the Director General's sentiments expressed during this resumed session, solidarity and collaboration have been and will be centrally important for us to overcome this pandemic and improve the accessibility, affordability, and quality of healthcare services. In the end, I thank all the member states for their participation in the resumed session and their insightful observations and sharing their experiences. I also thank the many non-government and intergovernmental organizations that partner with us and enable us to bring in the whole of society approach in health. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in India, we have just finished celebrating the grand Diwali festival, which is the festival of lights. Across the world, it is the festive season now. We have Christmas, Easter, and New Year celebrations lined up next month. As an eternal optimist, I hope that the festivals shall be the harbingers of good health, peace, and prosperity, and the dark period of the pandemic will soon be gone. My heartiest congratulations and greetings to all. A big shout out to the citizens of the world who are braving this unforeseen crisis. I wish each one of them good life and good health. I would also like to take this opportunity to add that if we can build a vision together and work even more swiftly, the new changed landscape will serve as a launching pad that shall literally propel WHO towards a leadership role. However, the potential of this moment will remain only as it was unless we seize the moment. This is the right time for all of us to initiate an intricate dialogue that shall culminate with the formulation of a new vision for WHO. For this, I wish to work closely together with all member nations in the coming months who bring in diversity of thinking and expertise of best practices adopted in recent times. Excellencies, permit me to say that we at WHO need to be a trailblazer. The world around us is changing, often with lightning speed, and always remember that we cannot stand still in a world of change. Working with passion and commitment, wanting to make a difference in the world, and being satisfied with nothing less, this passion manifests itself in WHO's commitment to providing transformative experiences for our member nations. Our DNA has always been to serve those who serve others. We must engender in our health workforce a fire in the belly, a desire to make a real difference in the post-COVID world, which will struggle for some time to stand on its feet. To do all this, we need to drive some radical changes within. We must make choices, many of them difficult. We must take actions, many of them challenging. Individually and collectively, we must be engaged in this effort. But the prize at stake, if we exercise the courage to seize the moment, is that we can together participate in a cause that is greater than ourselves. With these words, I shall conclude my closing remarks. I look forward to meeting you all together next year at the 148th session of the Executive Board, and this time, hopefully, physically. Thank you and namaskar. I now declare the 147th session of the Executive Board closed.